Everyone. This is our Wednesday, December 2nd, regular Board of County Commissioners meeting. Commissioner Richards and Commissioner Child, as well as County Manager Pitco, are all down in Colorado Springs at a Colorado County's Winter Conference. So I will be chairing the meeting today. Bill, is any additions or deletions to the agenda?
I do have a deletion on number 8 on the individual consideration items, second reading, the resolution approving an IGA with Eagle County for child welfare is going to be postponed. Eagle County hasn't finished their final review of it, so we want to postpone the second reading until we're ensured that they're good with the language.
So when we get to that, do we do a date certain to continue that?
John?
Anytime an action is noticed in the paper with a publication, it's better to continue it just so to a date certain, so we don't have to renote it. It saves everybody a little bit of time and money.
Okay, I see Kim's here, so at some point you can let us know if you have a date that they're ready to roll.
Okay.
When you come up shortly. Okay, thank you.
Just a second. Phyllis just said item number 8. I have it as item number 5 on the.
Oh, right, and
Okay.
on the internet it's 5.
It's
on
5,
the-
okay.
On
The printed one that I have, it's number 8.
Okay.
the couch.
You can have a shorter meeting than we are.
Yeah.
And I know that Charlotte was just reloading the agenda because
You know what it is? It's just a numbering. The printed agenda runs consecutively 1 through 9 until the land use items, and the one that's online starts after the consent. So I think you have the same content.
Okay, good, thank you.
That's reassuring.
You don't get out early, sorry.
Public comments. Here's it's an opportunity for anyone who wishes to make a public comment that is not on today's agenda set as a public hearing. So there's a lot of things on the agenda today, but not many of them are set for public hearing. So anyone who wishes to address one of these or anything else, you're welcome to do that for a few minutes. Lou, come forward and state your name for the record, please.
Louis Butner. I'm here seeking resolution for the complaints that I gave you folks a year ago. There has been no affirmative action on these 2 subdivision complaints. Possibly the best action that could take would be the executive session that I have requested numerous times. As I say, my complaints were put in last year, a year ago, and no affirmative action. This is actually an indifference to the public complaint. That's about it.
All right, thank you. I know that our county attorney has been working on this, so perhaps it hasn't had a resolution yet, but it is being in the process of going through the channels.
State channels, so to speak. But Lou, I didn't realize you wanted an exec session, to be quite honest with you. I didn't.
Well, as the county created the problems, I think it's up to the county to get these problems resolved.
Well,
If they have to complain to the state board on the initial problems, I think they should get off the dime and do it.
any scheduling, of course, for executive sessions is up to the board. I can confer with the board or the chair and get back to you on that.
But can you at least brief the board and the public in terms of the status of the complaint and where it's sitting now and why it's taken so long?
I don't have an answer for you as to why it's taking so long. I'm not familiar enough with the processes of the state board for review of surveyor performance or errors or things like that. I imagine they take the time they feel it takes to make an appropriate decision. That's all I know.
So at this point, it's out of the county's hands, it's in the hands of the state.
Well, it really never was in the county's hands except for a point of going forward and interjecting myself in review of plats and surveys going into the future. But as far as this goes, the idea, say, that Lou has brought up, the county joining in the complaint or appearing in front of the state board regarding the performance of the surveyor, things of that nature, I have not done. All I've done is communicate with the board just to see if they've reached a decision. I mean, the complaints that were filed by Mr. Butner are complete. I don't have anything to add to them. And the resolution of the matter is, in my opinion, better left to the state board. They know more about it than I do. So that's kind of where it is. Ultimately, at some point in time, there would need to be some correction to the plats that were recorded, but I'm hopeful for direction from the state board on the best way of affecting that, to be honest with you.
All right, so we need to wait to hear from the state board, and we'll continue to follow up and stay in touch with them to see how they're progressing.
That's what I've been doing.
Okay, thank you.
I want to point out that the one subdivision took county land that was deeded to the county, in my opinion, and used it as land and has now sold it to the lot owners as part of the lots that they purchased from that subdivision. A county, you folks are buying up land all the time, but you got no compensation for that strip of land.
Okay, well, thank you, Lou. I see another hand up here. Tony, you want to come up and state your name for the record, please?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, my name is Tony Kronberg, and there's three things. One is I wanted to let you know how excited I am about the new county plans for the new county building. As you can see right now in this room, I'm not sure what the occupancy number is, but you're standing room only. The second thing I wanted to bring forward is the Lift 1A. As you know, the ski company and some developers are proposing changing out Lift 1, the county portion of it, down to where the bottom of Lift 1A is. I would like to encourage the county to speak with the city about developing an extension in conjunction with this planning process, extending Lift 1A all the way down to Dean Street. And the Forest Service just took public comment through the 30th, and I submitted a letter. In it, I included the easements that were recorded since 1936, that particular piece is supposed to be free from any obstructions underneath it. So an aerial lift is what is recorded in the records. But can you imagine how exciting that would be to have a lift from Dean Street, and the carbon and environmentally save the snow? It would really fit in with that platform. The third thing that I wanted to bring forward is I'd like to thank you very much for paying very particular attention to the expansion of the sterile boarding area out at the airport. Last meeting I brought forward some other options because we still need more space, and we all agreed none of those were going to work. What happened since then is that the expansion in the sterile boarding area is not going to happen until January 15th. We have a huge Christmas and New Year's holiday season coming in and out. The fire marshal, along with John Kinney, has determined that the max occupancy numbers in the sterile boarding area have gone down. So you have less space for passengers to wait. What's happened also is the airlines have added more flights. So there's a real disconnect there. We're losing space, but we're gaining passengers. One of the other confines is, because of the scheduling, this is on a perfect day, because the holding area is now smaller, more passengers trying to get in, with 7 flights leaving within a 20-minute period, that the TSA security checkpoint can only process about 100 passengers per hour. Those 5 flights you can't get into the sterile boarding area are now outside. There's not enough time to get them through. A lot of us, as you know, have been thinking about different solutions. a solution I think that may work. I'm going to put it before you. John Kinney, as we know, is not here, and you're doing the reorganization, is to put some buses or some modulars on airside outside the terminal. And that recommendation, they do that in LA now. They actually put people on buses and take the buses to the planes, take the passengers to the planes. I don't think we have that distance to deal with, but I just want to put that in front of you, that when John Kinney returns, going to bring forward that to him. The airport recognizes the fact that they are over max capacity for maybe a week, so that this could be just a very temporary fix until January 15th, and in pursuit of making, hopefully, that we can move this thing along. When I spoke with the county's Lance Clark, beautiful question, answer, he said if we did buses, there would be no review process, so to speak. We could just put the buses out there and deal with it. People could wait. You get everybody through. Nobody's going to miss a flight. They will miss flights this year, the way, because of the numbers working. Or you could do a modular, and because it's an occupancy, fire code type of thing, that it could be expedited through your review process to address the safety need. So I just wanted to bring that forward, but I wanted to thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony, that's a good
Okay.
idea.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to make a public comment that is not on today's agenda for public comment? You here for,
Can I speak on the open space?
yeah, because that's not for public comment today.
Okay, then I would like to talk. My name's Chuck Downey. I'm from Redstone, and I want to support the proposed open space acquisition that's on your agenda today. I'm not going to be here on the 16th, so I really got, if I'm going to speak, I've got to do it now. This is a real bullseye for the Redstone community, probably more so than any other open space acquisition other than the park that just got completed. It's a huge wintering area for elk. It's a great recreational opportunity for the local residents and tourists, many of whom really can't get out and go uphill like a lot of the terrain around Redstone forces you to do. And also, if this were to fall into, excuse my expression, enemy hands, there would be houses there, and that would destroy all of what I just said, because they wouldn't allow people, and the elk don't like people either, so that would take care of those. I'm asking you to adopt the proposal that's in your agenda, but there is a red flag in there that I would like to point out. I don't know what the background is, but there's a note in there that there has been a previous proposal in requiring this that would involve participation by Healthy Rivers. And if that were to happen, if I'm interpreting this, the wording in your agenda, that in your packet, that this would negate some of the guarantees that the Open Space Charter provides. That's a red flag. I think that the future of this parcel should not be in the hands of two departments. It should be in the hands of one department. That's open space. The Open Space Charter is pretty clear about the fact that these parcels, especially those that have these kind of environmental assets, should not have other developments going on in them or around them. So I urge you to adopt the motion or the proposal that is in your packet, and I think this would just be tremendous for the community. I can also see that it fits with other open spaces there, notably the coke ovens. This is a butt-to-butt, so how often do you have the opportunity to do that? Okay, thanks for listening. I won't be with you on the 16th, but I hope that my words will be.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Anybody else wishing to make any public comments that's not on today's agenda with the public comment aspect to it? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment and bring it back to the board for commissioner comments. Patty?
I'll just reiterate a comment that was made at our last board meeting about the safety of the streets. It's still very slippery out there. I almost had a run-in today with a car when I was in the crosswalk. People just not slowing down to come through town. So I want to urge people again, streets are icy. We're back into winter, which is great, so please slow down and please watch for pedestrians. I think it's important for public safety. And I'm glad to see them making a lot of snow, and the races this weekend went really well. Again, our community should be proud, and hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to just mention, talk about open space. Picken County Open Space and Trails calendar is out, hot off the press. It's available here in Plaza 1, either downstairs at the first entrance or upstairs. And it's got some great pictures as usual. It's the 25th year Open Space is celebrating. And it's got some interesting facts in this. Over 25 years, including open space purchases and conservation easements, we have conserved almost 20,000 acres in Picken County. We've got about 70 miles of trails and additional 60 miles of Nordic trails. So the board over the last 25 years has done a great job, and I want to thank all the citizens for continuing to support the Open Space and Trails program. The calendars are available.
Okay, George, can I just note that calendar is put together by two staff people, our lead ranger, John Armstrong, and Janet Burkhart. So special thanks to those two for making that happen.
Good, great, thank you. And we'll move on to, it must be a special day today because not only is the room filled, but we've got the sheriff here and two former county commissioners are here. So I'm not sure what's going on, but we'll find out. Okay, we're going to...
The 12-step recovery.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to our consent action items. These are single readings. The first is the approval of the minutes of the special meeting November 10th, the regular meeting of November 18th, and the work sessions of November 5th and November 10th. The next is a resolution for a child welfare citizen review panel. The next is a resolution to appoint citizen board members.
I think,
want to pull any of
yeah, I
these?
think as Steve would do if he was here, I'd like to pull the resolution appointing citizens board members so we can announce them to the public. But I would make a motion to approve items 1 and 2.
Second.
Okay, I got two questions or two comments. Jeanette, on the minutes of November 18th, I think you had a call to order need to be corrected. I think Steve Child was here, and you had Rachel as a call to order.
Did he come in late?
Or was that it? Is that the
No,
day he
you're
came in
right.
late?
She was here. I thought he
Okay.
might have come in late that
Okay,
day.
and then the other is, as long as we don't need to hear about the Child Welfare Citizen Review Board, as long as Kim is here, and we'll have another agenda item coming up. Are you going to stay for that next agenda item when it comes up?
Actually, I was going to present on the citizen review panel today, and the one that was pulled was the IGA with
Okay, so
Beacon and
you'll be there
Western
for
Eagle, and
that.
I can speak to that if you want me to.
Okay, we will wait on. So we have a motion, we could approve item number 1, the minutes, and also the resolution for Child Welfare Citizen Review Panel.
You want to hold the vote and let her speak first before we?
Oh, did you want to comment on the review panel?
Yeah, I have the,
Okay, I'm sorry.
okay. Hi, I'm Kim Dubois, Adult and Family Services Manager for Picken County, and this is a resolution we're asking you to approve today to appoint members to our Child Welfare Citizen Review panel. It's a key component of our child welfare grievance process. Each county by statute is required to have a grievance process for child welfare, for families who are involved in our child welfare system who have complaints against a caseworker or a county employee or whatever. The process that we have is first they talk to the caseworker, then they would come to speak with the manager or supervisor. If it's not resolved there, then they would go to the county director, HHS county director, and speak with her. We've been able to resolve all of our grievances through that process, but part of the process is to have an appointed citizen review panel for Picken County, and so we're making recommendations for that. We're excited about our panelists, and we feel that they would be unbiased. They're very knowledgeable about child welfare issues and child issues and family issues, and that they would be rigorous in their approach to looking at any grievance that might rise to that level. We're recommending the appointment of Tony Pazzarelli, the Director of Mind Springs Health, Jordana Sabella, who is the Community Health Services Public Health Planner, and she's also the parent of a minor child, which is one of the requirements for one of the members, and Shirley Ritter, who is the Kids First Child Care Resource Director, to serve on the panel. Do you have any questions? Or?
No, thank you.
Okay.
So who's making the recommendation?
We're making the recommendation through our
Health and
department.
Human
Yes,
Services.
yes,
Is making a recommendation.
right.
And do you interview these people?
Yes, we talked to all of them. They understand what the process entails, and they also, we believe, would have an unbiased approach to the situation, so they're not tied to any recommendation that they would make involving a grievance.
And so then that recommendation comes to Nan, who's the head of Health and Human Services?
If a complaint isn't resolved through the first 3 steps.
No, the recommendation is, so I'm just trying to
Sure.
to clarify what the appointment process is, who makes that recommendation specifically, and then that recommendation then comes to the Board of County Commissioners.
Yes.
So Nan
Sundin, right.
Health and Human Services
Yes.
has recommended, you have an internal process,
Right.
and then Nan, as the head of Health and Human Services, is making this
Making the
recommendation.
recommendation, right.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I'm good.
Okay. Thanks, Kim.
Okay, thank you.
And then, well, I guess we'll just go down in order here. You wanted to pull the resolution to appoint the citizen board members?
Yeah, because I'll read it out loud, but we can vote on 1 and 2 now if you want. And then
Yeah, there's a motion on the,
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
floor.
Okay, so motion for the first 2 items. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed unanimously. Okay, Patty?
Okay, Steve Childs is always really good about pulling these off, so to read, so we so appreciate people who are on our volunteer boards. And this resolution is to appoint to our Healthy Rivers and Streams Board a new member, Catherine Berg. And we're very excited to have her on board. We had 2 applicants. They both had really good qualifications. Catherine had worked for the county prior, and she's gone on to get her master's degree, so we're glad to have her back in the Valley. And of course, the other appointment is to renew the appointment of Ruth Brown, who I think everybody in the community knows, and she does an amazing job on the board. So I want to thank them both for being part of this exciting board, the Healthy Rivers and Stream Board. So I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution appointing these 2 members to the Healthy Rivers and Stream Board.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our individual consideration items. These are all first readings they were set for public hearings on December 16th. First is a resolution approving the supplemental appropriations from September to December. Susan Atwood is here.
Yes, Susan Atwood, Finance Department. These are all supplemental items that you have reviewed except for the one upping the payments for sales tax to the various entities. And that's because we have received greater than budget sales tax. So we had to appropriate the revenue and in order to be able to pay the share to RAFTA, Basalt, Snowmass, and the city of Aspen. So do you all have any questions about anything?
So these supplemental items, we've all seen them prior,
Except for the one on the sales tax.
except for the one on the sales tax, and that's good news.
Yes, it is good news.
Okay. Any questions?
Do I make a motion? I'll make a motion to approve the resolution approving the supplemental appropriations for September through December, set for 2nd reading on December the 16th.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is a resolution approving the Pitkin County Emergency Operations Plan update, and Valerie McDonough is here for that, as well as the sheriff.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello.
Well, I'm Valerie McDonald. I'm the Pitkin County Emergency Manager, Joe DeSalvo, Sheriff. I'm here with an update of the County Emergency Operation Plan. The state requires us to have a current written plan. The last plan was adopted in March of 2012. This plan better reflects the systems and the system and structure we've got in place currently. The EOP describes the structure and guidelines for how we would manage a major disaster in the county. We're very fortunate here that on a day-to-day basis, our operations people, our first responders, deal with whatever comes their way in a very efficient and capable manner. So this plan addresses the switch, how we would transition quickly from how we serve our citizens on a daily basis to emergency response. So the plan's about the shift. In the last 2 years, it's a 100-page plan. There's over 100 pages of FEMA guidance to write the plan to the state's satisfaction. So it's a 100-page plan. I've pulled out two really, what I consider the two most noteworthy items, and I'll talk about each one for about 30 seconds and open it up for questions. In the last 2 years, we're really proud of what we've developed. We have a Type 4 multi-jurisdictional incident management team. The sheriff has oversight of this team. These are our command and general staff operations response people. They're responsible for directing unseen incident management. And what's noteworthy about this is I don't know of another county our size, and I know that in our Northwest region, which encompasses 10 different counties, we're the only one to have a Type 4 team. It's a higher level of experience and training, so we're really very fortunate about that. And then under emergency management, which is where I operate, we've developed 15 multiple jurisdictional, again, emergency support function teams. As the name implies, our role is to support the incident management team. The emergency operation plan describes the 15 functions, and I'm going to name them all because it will give you an idea of the depth of the knowledge and experience that we have in an emergency operations center. The 15 functions are transportation, communication, public works, fire, emergency management, health and human services, logistics, public health, search and rescue, hazmat, animal services, utilities, law, community recovery, and public information. So essentially any support the incident management team may need during a major incident can be provided by the people in that room. To give you an idea of the magnitude and scope of this group, each team has a lead and a second lead, and each team has 10 to 20 people on it. So we've got over 200 people on these teams. These people are civilians for the most part. It's the first time we've organized this group, so we know going into an emergency who's going to fill these different emergency support function teams' seats in the Emergency Operations Center. That team has over 500 hours of training and exercising in the last 2 years. I know that outside of the counties on the Front Range that have dealt with the big fires and the big floods, Pitkin County has one of the most organized emergency support function teams in the state. So both the incident management team and the emergency support function teams are fully supported by the Pitkin County Public Safety Council. In closing, we spend a lot of time in the county preparing for disasters we hope never happen. And the reason we do this is because all studies show that having the structure in place and doing the training we do will improve our response during an emergency. The counties on the Front Range that had the structure in place and did the training responded much better to the floods, just for an example. And I'll stop there and open it up for questions.
I have a question. The support function teams, isn't that the 15 different areas, isn't that pretty much part of when you go to these emergency management meetings, the regional ones? They have representatives from pretty much all of those functions, but what you've done is taken those functions and really enhanced them as part of our local response. That's what it sounds like we're doing here.
They're part of the equation for sure. They're the support arm of the incident management team. And I should mention, it's not that we created this structure. This is part of the National Incident Management System. I mean, it's a state-endorsed system. And the beauty of it, you know, we've always talked about incident command, ICS, incident command system, ICS. If I walked into an incident management team, a command post, or an EOC, Emergency Operations Center, was told to sit in a specific chair, I would know what my job was. So it's standardized across the country. So any of us could get deployed anywhere, like a lot of us did during the flooding on the Front Range, and know what our role is. We've just taken it to another level in identifying who these people are.
Well, and when we had that training that was out of Mountain Rescue last year, you could see those function teams in action, and it was pretty amazing to see them. And everybody was on the, if you had to do, you know, if you were logistics, you were looking for supplies, you were doing public service, you know, part of it, I mean, public information. Everybody was there and ready to go, and it was pretty remarkable. So I think it's great that we've just bumped that up another level. So. And I really appreciate when we can do mutual aid. We need it in rural communities, but obviously what we've seen happening on the Front Range, those big guys over there need us little guys to come over and help them out, and I think that's perfect. Gives us a training and experience and allows those jurisdictions to operate their jurisdictions in a time of crisis, and we can pick up the slack for them, and I think that's great. That's how it works.
I'm glad that several of you were able to come to the training exercise we did in May. It was a 2-day exercise. The state's Type 3 incident management team came in, and we've got the Type 4. So if our team started to exceed or meet or exceed their capabilities, we would call in the state Type 3 team, and they would interface with our team. And then if we go to a 2 or 1, those are the federal teams. So there's just a remarkable structure in place, and if you know the structure and you train on it, we're set up well to handle an emergency.
Yeah, and I recently met with Abby Cobb, who used to, you know, do the emergency management in the region, and met with her the other day about bark beetle stuff, and talked with her about trying to become more involved again with the state, and I think it's the Department of Public Safety now, with the State All Hazards Advisory Committee, because that was a good outreach for Pitkin County there too. So I appreciate this, and I'm fully in support. And I haven't had a chance to read through the whole plan, but trust me, I've got it now, so I'll read it.
It's tedious, Patty.
I like it.
My goal was to make the plan readable and meaningful. I took a 150-page document. I was able to delete 50 of just filler because it's a state plan and you have to get it approved by them, which this plan has been. But I want to make this point. It's not like the state says we have to have this plan, so we created a system so we could write a plan. This system was already in place. It's what we do. And again, completely multi-jurisdictional on both of those teams. So it was just a matter of documenting it, formalizing it in the written plan.
Well, I'll review it and let you know.
And Joey, what's your role in this?
As far as management of the team,
Yes.
it needs somebody's name on it.
Right.
And we took it over as, it's called the Pitkin County IMT, and I just happen to be the manager. But I'm not doing any of the heavy lifting, George, I promise you.
But the incident command team, that's, you talked about, Valerie, that there are over 200 citizen volunteers, but it goes beyond Pitkin County in terms of the team, in terms of multi-jurisdiction. Does it go throughout the valley, or?
Pitkin County.
It's just Pitkin County.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can be on loan, as Patty mentioned, to other communities. We went to Katrina. I mean, we sent 5 people to Katrina during that crisis, and as Valerie said, you could literally get to that command post and fill a chair that was filled by some guy from Oregon 2 minutes before, and you fit in. So briefly, because I don't want to take more of your time and keep people waiting on this, but this all started in 1987 with a guy named Steve Crockett, who jammed the incident command system down our throat, and we gagged on it and were reluctant to accept it, but we did. And that was Under Sheriff Broadus who accepted Steve's vision on this. We started to operate under it for about 10 years while the whole state resisted, and we started to embrace it. So we used it on anything as small as a 2-car accident up to a wildfire in Laredo. And we started to, as I said, embrace it, accept it, and educate ourselves on it. And I really think for probably a good 20 years, we were light years ahead of the rest of the state. This Type 3 team that we've created is still ahead of the other counties, certainly in our region. As Valerie said, we're the only county with one. Excuse me, I'm sorry. We're the only county with one, and I'm proud of that. And it really did take a lot of work and commitment and training on all the people, the members of the IMT. Alex Burchetta is one of our lead guys, and he gets requested to go all over the state. We sent a team last year to the World Ski Championships. Valerie's been deployed to the floods. Alex went to the fires. So not only do we have the team, but we do have some exercising and real-life exercises in other states and other counties. So I think we are ahead on this one, and I usually don't like to blow our own horns, but in this case I don't mind because it hopefully makes our citizens feel safer. We are ahead of the curve on this one, and we've always been.
Thanks. It was interesting. Yesterday we had a budget presentation from the ambulance district, and again we heard how qualified our folks are, our professionals in the county are, that run their ambulances. And so it's great to know that they're tied in with the team here, and you're doing a great job, Al. As you said, hopefully we'll never have to use this, but it's in place, and we'll be ready to go if necessary, so thank you.
George, can I?
Yeah, I just want to thank Valerie for all her work, and it's really great. And Joe, thanks for the support that you give Valerie. And
She's done it all, Michael, and I think she's a valuable employee, and I'm proud of that.
yeah, you should be proud of her.
Thank
So
you.
the one thing I would suggest is to hyperlink, at least online, hyperlink the table of contents. So when you hit the subject matter
see what you're saying.
on the,
Goes right to
that it goes right to the thing, because otherwise it's kind of a long scroll.
All right.
And it makes it less useful on computer, but it would make it very useful if people could go to the subject matter that they wanted like that. So,
Will do.
thank you.
I just wanted to add, I too was at Katrina representing Pitkin County, and actually saw the boots on the ground there, and it was amazing. And you're right, there were people from all over the country, and they got there and they knew exactly what they were supposed to do. So to actually see it in effect and see it working was amazing for me as the bystander watching the process go on. And it's nice because it was a great experience for our people there, from the fire departments to the sheriff's office to emergency management. So so you guys, now you do a great job, and we appreciate it a lot.
And it's amazing how enthusiastic people are to stay involved for something that they hope never happens.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to stay enthused when you're, you know.
All 15 of my emergency support functions leads wanted to be here today. I told them they couldn't. If you want them to, I can have them come on the
Very
16th.
proud.
But they're very engaged for being a volunteer, multi-jurisdictional team, and knock on wood, we haven't had the big one yet. So
Well,
they're
some point we
really
should bring them in
remarkable.
And recognize them.
Yeah, I would like to
Great.
do that.
I would
Great.
love to have them in here.
Yeah.
I'm very
Yeah.
proud of them.
Good, you should be. We all should.
That's a great idea.
Okay, thank you guys, have a good
So would you
day.
like a motion to approve?
Better stay just in case.
Not approve it? I will very proudly make a motion to approve a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners repealing resolution number 032-2012, 2012, through the Emergency Operations Plan, and adopting an updated plan, updated Pitkin County Emergency Operations Plan.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is an ordinance approving the Coal Creek Schumacher property acquisition. We have open space staff here, and again, this is first reading. It's set for public hearing on December 16th.
Thank you, George. While Matt is getting our map out of the computer, I'll just introduce this.
And you are?
I'm Dale Will. I'm the Director of Pitkin County Open Space and Trails. Thank you. And this is a piece of property that's kind of been in our docket now for some time, as you're aware, and it's one that's presented its challenges as regards our purchase. But before I go into that, let me start by saying it's really an extraordinary opportunity to acquire about a mile of creek frontage with no significant development on it that is easily accessible and adjacent to existing county property. So if you were to try to match those three attributes up with anything else that we might be looking at, it's pretty rare to have a chance to buy a piece of property like that in 2015. People have looked at it, have commented it could become the North Star of Redstone, and so that was what originally got Open Space interested in it. As you know, we've looked at some other potential uses of it, and a couple of months ago, the legal team that's representing Lee Schumacher noted to me that there's one problem that would be easier to solve if we could simplify what our potential purposes of this might be. And specifically what I'm referring to, and I think everyone's aware of this by now, is that one of these two lots has a covenant on it that's been stymieing our ability to move forward on this closing. There's two lots. The red lot is number 10. That one has no covenant. The upper lot has a covenant on it. And there's been a lot of discussion about what those mean and how you might be able to modify them. But in any event, Lee Schumacher's legal team, who are here, Lenny Oates and Pat McAllister are here, noted that if we were to simplify what we're trying to do here, they think that there's a path forward on the covenant on lot 11, and specifically looking at open space uses consistent with the surrounding subdivision land. It doesn't show on our map, but this property is entirely surrounded by other parcels that were all carved off of a original parent parcel. So I brought this back to Open Space on that basis, and they determined that this merits moving forward simply as an open space purchase, and that's why we've retooled the ordinance in the manner that we have to set this up so that we can focus on what the final resolution of our covenant problem can be. Now, yesterday, by coincidence, we received a detailed memo with a lot of attachments and so on from the team, and I don't think anyone's had a chance to review that, but we don't need to try to digest that for today's discussion. There's a contingency in the contract as well as a second reading yet to come, and that letter and the attachments and so on have been distributed. So my recommendation and the recommendation of Open Space and Trails is to approve the ordinance that's in front of you on first reading and focus on the correspondence that we received yesterday to see if that's adequate to satisfy the purposes of Open Space and Trails.
Michael?
So how many acres is the combined lot?
There are 235s.
235, so it's 70 acres?
Yes.
And how close is it to Redstone?
Well, hope this good. This little laser Redstone is here. We are all just down at Elk Park a few weeks ago dedicating the new depot. That sits right here. So this is the South Redstone Bridge. The Redstone Inn would sit right about here. The coke ovens are here. And as Chuck noted, this parcel is contiguous with the coke ovens parcel, which was acquired by the county through the efforts of some local citizens as well as county staff. So it's essentially contiguous with Redstone, although, as you know, Redstone has no political boundary, and consequently, it's hard to say exactly where the boundary of Redstone is. But
So what happens if this were to be acquired? What happens? Do you do some sort of plan? What do you do?
Right, I think the practice of the open space department is starting to become fairly well known, but essentially, before there's any decisions made about improvements or uses or projects on the property, we go through a management planning process where we first inventory the natural resources on the property, come up with a draft proposal based on our sort of suite of purposes for the open space program, which are protect habitat, protect scenery, promote appropriate recreation, and promote agriculture. So we work our way through that grid, and we'll come out with a draft of a plan and then submit it to the whole world, and especially the neighborhood, for review. We'll undertake a process of getting public comments on the plan, and then ultimately that comes back to the county for approval.
So there's a large public process involved once you sort of do the technical aspects of this.
Right.
Of this plan, and then the citizenry, all of Picken County is involved in that plan.
Correct.
But probably Redstone to a large degree.
I would think with citizens such as we have in Redstone, I would expect a high degree of participation. We just came off of a similar exercise for Elk Park that in some ways was kind of the grandmother of our public process system of what Gary and his team were able to do at Elk Park. But we first want to know the science. We want to know, is it critical winter range, and for who or what, and all those questions, and then come back with a draft that the community can discuss.
Okay. Thanks, Dale.
So I have two things. So the covenant, which we've been aware of for some time now, we have a contingency in this contract, so if we can't resolve that at such time, because we know that's an obstacle that we need to resolve prior to the county actually purchasing this parcel, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. The other question I have is about healthy rivers and streams. Much like we do, I believe, at North Star, we bring in healthy rivers and streams to work with open space and trails for habitat or river restoration projects, the scope of those projects, the need for those projects. So by open space purchasing this property outright with open space funds, that does not preclude us from bringing in healthy rivers and stream as part of the management and possible river restoration projects?
Correct. What it would do is it would put some sidebars on the potential diversity of things we could consider there. But if open space is authorized to do things like riparian habitat restoration or enhancement of aquatic habitat, think of those things that would go on inside of a nature preserve. But there would be other potential uses, and what has been discussed is some effort to take sediment out of Coal Creek that would be done in a way that would really be outside the scope of what you would want to see in a nature preserve. And that wouldn't be allowed if we proceed in this basis. So
I know the issue of the sediment in Coal Creek has been of discussion for years now. And so I think of any efforts that we might want to do upon purchasing this property with working with healthy rivers and streams, I just don't want to preclude their involvement at some level.
Right, we enjoy our partnership with Healthy Rivers. But
Yeah,
to sort of repeat myself, to do this with open space dollars, you really need to narrow this
scope
to what you would want to see at North Star, for example.
Okay.
So just to follow up on that, just for clarification, Lot 10 is unencumbered by any covenants, so that's very easy to look at a management plan in terms of opportunities that perhaps the community can enjoy, whether it be pedestrian trails, or there currently is a concessionaire there that is doing some horse trail riding and things like that.
Right.
So that's, Lot 11 is where there's a little issue in terms of trying to clarify what those covenants would allow and not allow. And the goal is that those covenants would allow open space to utilize that parcel through a management plan as you do with any of the parcels. So if it's going to be to protect wildlife or to establish some recreational opportunities that would allow that?
Exactly. That's our goal. Yeah. So on lot 11, we're hoping that through the work of all the attorneys in the room and maybe some others, that we can determine that the full range of what would be normal open space uses can be considered for lot 11.
And then just as a devil's advocate, if for some reason we could not come to a conclusion that that was going to work on lot 11, would the Open Space and Trails Board still be recommending to purchase lot 10?
I haven't specifically asked them that question, but my personal view is no. This is a situation where this value of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and the reason I feel that way is because lot 11 is the wilder part of this property. Lot 10 is much more heavily impacted by the outfitter that you were referring to, and it just doesn't have the sex appeal unless you get that whole mile of the river. So that's my personal view of it. Certainly open space the board could weigh in on that same question if that situation arises.
Okay, and so this is first reading, and so we would hope to have some of these issues clarified by time second reading comes December 16th, and if not, you have the ability to do a continuation of the contract, or what would you do?
Well, I think John's received copies of the letter from Lenny and Pat, and that team will digest it, have some advice back to you on that. If, depending on what the conclusion is about that, I'm not sure what we will do, but there's a range of things that we could consider. We can choose not to approve the thing. We can renegotiate. I don't want to speculate too much about that until we know where we sit with the proposal that we got yesterday.
Okay, and I know, just to reiterate, one of Patty's questions is, I think when this first came before the board, I think with open space, one of the things that we were interested in was the ability to do some reclamation along Cold Creek that would try to limit some of the sediment that is flowing currently into the Crystal. Obviously, we're not going to clear that entirely, but if we can reduce the sediment going into the Crystal, that would be certainly a worthwhile goal. So the ability to do something like that with settlement ponds, you're saying that's not going to be included as part of this covenant, so that's a discussion for us to look at, probably with a full board that we don't have today.
Right. It's a little bit intricate because, as we were discussing, the covenants don't apply to lot 10 to begin with. So we're really only talking about, in regard to the covenant, lot 11. But then there's the overlapping complication of what is or isn't allowed for open space properties under the county charter. I don't know that there's a clearly defined line right there. The charter speaks to natural habitat and that sort of thing. Where you cross from a wetlands to a sediment pond, I'm not quite sure as a technical matter, but you've got those two competing questions that make it a little bit difficult to define precisely, can we do what we want? Problem is, we don't know exactly what might be the best way to capture the sediment, and consequently it makes it impossible to analyze with any precision what would be allowed or not allowed in terms of the sediment type of goals for the property.
But what you're saying, what you said earlier, Dale, was that regardless of that issue, which is an important issue, the Open Space and Trails Board is recommending this purchase because of all its other attributes as they look at any land acquisition.
Exactly. Appreciate you highlighting our calendar, and as I said, the opportunity to acquire this much stream frontage in a setting like this is extremely rare. And of course, Aspen is happy that it did it back in 1978, or Pitkin County did it back in '78 with the North Star. But this is a similar type of a property. So the Open Space Board unanimously recommended proceeding to do this purely for its open space values.
Okay.
Would you like a motion?
Any other questions?
Let me ask a question, Dale. This is $1,800,000 for these two lots, so $900,000 a lot. But one lot's encumbered by covenants. Why would they be of equal value?
Well, that's a good question too. The covenant allows residential development. The lot 11 is the nicer of the two, at least in my view, from the point of view of someone that wanted to build a beautiful home in a fairly secluded location. You're further away from Highway 133, you're further away from the Coke ovens. The context is more beautiful. There's more native habitat that's intact, as opposed to the Lot 10, which has been fairly heavily impacted by the original agricultural use, which is now morphed into the outfitter. So if I were given my choice of where I would want to build a nice little house, I would choose Lot 11. There's quirky things that go on with appraisal of mountain property and where density may or may not increase the value of something. Maybe a single home site in a pristine environment is your highest value. We have not specifically appraised this property, so I can't cite an appraisal, but that would be my best view of the relative monetary value of these two parcels.
So this is valued on the best and highest use, which would be residential, and yet we're buying it for a different purpose with an encumbrance that limits that purpose even further. So,
well, we're hoping the encumbrance is going to be moot before we're done, and we're always in the situation of having our monetary values driven by something other than open space and trying to capture these properties for other uses, and this is consistent with our general dilemma.
right, it's a competitive world out there. So is there going to be a contingency, an appraisal contingency on this or not?
We do not have an appraisal contingency.
So what justifications can you offer for the price then?
When this came up through open space a year ago, and also through the county commissioners, we talked a fair amount about what neighboring properties have bought and sold. And you have that, what's this thing called, the Magic something, Wilderness Ranch or something. The two properties on the north side of this have transacted for fairly impressive numbers that exceed this. On the other side of it, you've got a row of 35-acre parcels. This is all shady over here. This is a north slope. This is flat, and then this is fairly flat over here. So when Open Space looked at this, it was more mindful of the values that we saw in the most recent transactions over here than here. Of course, any type of appraisal is a guess, and until someone walks in and writes a check, you're not quite sure what a willing buyer will pay a willing seller. But we're comfortable that the value that we ended up with was in the range. I think the Schumachers paid $750,000 per lot in 1999, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not entirely sure, but I think that's about right. I'd have to confirm it.
So I'm pretty sure that off the top of my head that was where they started, and that was 16 years ago.
So the Open Space and Trails Board had a thorough discussion of value here, and we're comfortable without an appraisal going forward with this purchase, and that's their recommendation today.
Yes.
You know, I went to the ribbon cutting at the Elk Park, which was great. By the way, it's a great building. It's perfect. And I got there early, so I did drive up there and look at these parcels from the road. They are gorgeous. That upper parcel is a beautiful piece of land. And if you're talking about a value of $900,000 for that piece of land, and the way, I'm not an appraisal person, I'm not a real estate agent, but just looking at the way the dollars are going up, I think that this is a good value for us to be purchasing. So I am going to support this and moving on to second reading, if you would like a motion.
Certainly.
I will make a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of the Coal Creek Schumacher property. This is first reading, second reading to be held on December 16th.
Second.
Yeah, I'm going to support this on the first reading. I think I have some concerns in terms of use and covenants and future opportunities in terms of addressing Coal Creek and sediment going into Crystal. But I also recognize that certainly for the residents up in Redstone, there's very little opportunity for people to go out as we heard earlier, public comment, just to go for a nice walk or stroll or run without going straight up a hillside. And I know we have...
Which he has no problem doing, by the way, but...
Yeah, unless you're a mountain goat. But, and I know we have plans in the works, with hope in terms of continuing the Crystal River Valley Bike Trail up through Redstone to the top of McClure's Pass. That's a few years out, and that will allow a safe place for pedestrians and residents to go out and enjoy the outdoors. So this property provides that opportunity now and in the future. So that's really positive for visitors and certainly for the residents who like to go out and experience the outdoors. So I'll support this on first reading, given all these other contingencies. So we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, thanks,
Thank
guys.
you. Thank you all for coming. Public hearing on this will be on the 16th. Okay, let's see. We're going to move on to a resolution approving an IGA with Eagle County for child welfare and adult protection services. And we heard that they had asked for, Eagle County had asked for a continuance on this. And so we just need a date certain, at least for the motion.
I put it December 16th is the next one.
Kim had to leave, and she just sent me an email and asked for December 16th.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to continue this item until December 16th
Second.
for its second reading.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. And the last individual consideration item, again, set for public hearing December 16th, is the ordinance authorizing the chair to execute an amended and restated agreement for grant and acceptance of a trail easement from AVR, which is Aston Valley Ranch, AHLLC. This has been continued from October 28th and November 18th. Am I missing something?
The IGA with the Nordic Ski Trails of the city of Aspen.
It's item number 4 on the...
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped right over that.
Skipping over you guys.
Great, we're approved. I'm gone.
I'm going to backtrack here, thank you. It's, what's next is a resolution approving the IGA with the City of Aspen for the Pitco County Nordic Ski Trails Program Management.
Yes. Well, thank you. I'm Gary Tenenbaum with Pitco County Open Space and Trails, and I got Matt Kuhn, the City of Aspen Trails Manager, and we were here a couple weeks ago with the first reading, and nothing was significantly changed for second reading, except we added the resolution that was not in there to begin with. But now the resolution is in there, and we still recommend the approval of this, and then we will go to the City of Aspen to get their approval of the IGA and continue the Nordic grooming that we've been doing for the last 9 years.
Questions?
I have no questions.
How is the Nordic grooming going, Matt?
We could use a little more snow, but I hear the high school skiing really well. And the golf course is skiable, but very thin in spots.
And those are right now the only two places that you would be grooming.
Yeah, we'll need a little more snow to get snow mass. And there is a small chance we'll have portions of the Owl Creek Trail open by the weekend, depending upon snow. So we're going out to do some testing and exploring tomorrow.
So would you like a motion to approve?
Please.
I will make a motion to approve a resolution approving an IGA with the City of Aspen for the Pitkin County Nordic Ski Trails Program Management.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Can I, George, just thank the city of Aspen for the great job they do for us on this program?
Thank you, City of Aspen, for the great job you do on the trails management.
And they do. It's a great partnership. It should be noted, the city does do the trail work, the maintenance, and the upgrade, but it's funded through our Pitkin County Open Space and Trails mill levy for our overall program. Okay, motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, now we'll go back, or go forward to the next, which is an ordinance authorizing the chair to execute an amended and restated agreement for grant and acceptance of a trail easement from AVR, AH, and LLC. And who do we have?
Hello, everyone. Good to be here.
Who are we?
My name is David Myler. I'm here on behalf of AVR AH as the owner of Aspen Valley Ranch. And AVR AH would be the grantor of the easement that's on the agenda for discussion. The primary focus of the discussion is intended to be the physically challenged trail that passes through Aspen Valley Ranch, and in particular some of the aspects of managing that particular trail for the benefit of users and also the ranch. And before we get started, we'd like to request that this discussion be continued or postponed. It's been the subject of an awful lot of discussion, as you all will remember, including significant input from Rachel and Steve. And it's a fairly unique subject. It's not something that you're going to see day in and day out in the county when it comes to trails and so on. And we think that we would really appreciate Rachel and Steve's input and benefit from that input, and would like to see if we can find a date when we could have this discussion with the full board. So we are prepared to make a presentation if you want to today, but we are respectfully requesting that the matter be postponed for a while.
Board thoughts?
I already have that noted on my thing. Would that be appropriate for us to have a full board for this discussion? So I don't have a problem continuing it.
Michael?
No, I don't have a problem either.
Okay, there's always, never guarantee you're going to have a full board at any time. right?
Understood.
And so to continue, and then if you don't have a full board next time, we would want to continue continuing, right?
Sooner or later, we're going to have to deal with the issue and try to get this easement finalized. The new trail is completed. Most everything is done out there. This is the last remaining piece of the puzzle that we need to try to figure out. But we'd like to at least try to find an agenda where we're expecting to have a full board, and we understand that that might not happen.
So the new trail has been completed. And I forget the status on if they're, Mr. Ely?
Yes.
I forget, do we have winter closures on this trail at all, or is it?
Yes.
Yes.
And when do they go into effect?
What?
How they-
December
I think
15th
it was
or December
first.
1st, one of the two.
So
Right about
the
now.
winter closure is going into effect anyway, so no one should be or can be utilizing the trail at this point
Yes.
That's correct.
for any purposes.
Correct.
Okay, so there's no sense of urgency per se.
George?
Yes.
Can I request the applicants to bring a map, at least one we can put up on the screen, so the public is aware of what trail we're talking about, what segments of the trail?
We have one.
That'd be great.
Okay, so based on the request from the applicant, I would accept a motion to continue this to December 16th.
I'll make a motion to continue this to December 16th, and hopefully we'll have a full board.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Okay.
Do we need to set up for the next? Can we take a little break before we?
Let's see, we're going to go into land use public hearings. You board need to take a short break?
Yeah, why don't we take a break and they can set up for it if they
Take
need
a
to.
10-minute break,
Perfect.
back at 1:20. We're going to move into our land use public hearings, and the first is the Lot 5 White Star LLC appeal. And this is an appeal based on a hearing officer's decision, and I just want to read this for the public. This is a hearing at the meeting on the appeal, which shall be a public meeting. The Board of County Commissioners shall review the record of decision and shall provide the appealant an opportunity to discuss the grounds for an appeal and the basis for an alleged error in the decision. After the presentations from all adversely affected persons, the board may hear from any other persons it deems appropriate. And the criteria for the appeal, so an appeal is not a de novo consideration of the merits of the development application that gave rise to the appeal. The appeal body identified shall only reverse, modify, or remand a decision on appeal if it finds that there has been a clear and demonstrable error, abuse of discretion, or denial of procedural due process in the application of the facts in the record to the standards of this land use code. So that's just some quick background, and Mike, are you going to present this?
Can I ask a
Yes.
question? John, what does de novo mean?
To hear the application anew.
So we're not doing that, is
Correct.
that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Mike Kramer with Pitkin County Planning Staff, and this is the Lot 5 White Star LLC site plan and subdivision exemption for minor plat amendment appeal hearing of Hearing Officer Decision 04-2015. And the applicant for this application is the Lot 5 White Star LLC, and they are represented by Richard Wax and Associates. And the appellant is the W/J Metro District, also represented by these gentlemen up here, and we can have them identify themselves for the record when it's time. And for background, the hearing officer who in this capacity was acting as hearing officer, Sarah Oates, heard this request. And this was, as I said, a site plan application, minor plat amendment, that was scheduled for administrative review. However, an objection was filed by the W/J Metro District, and pursuant to the code, it goes to an objection hearing. And as I said, Sarah Oates was the hearing officer who made the determination, which is attached to your packet. And what I was thinking, George, that I could just give some background on this so that the board understands what the application was and what Sarah approved, and then just give a brief history of the property, if that's okay. I've got some plats queued up here on the screen, and the subject property is at 51 White Star Drive and is legally identified as Lot 5, Filing 5, W/J subdivision. This is the final plat approval of the W/J subdivision, and it is hard to read, but this is the subject lot where the cursor is right here. This is Lot 5. And this plat shows the subject lot in its capacity here in the bolded lines. Off to the right, actually back up and say that this is McLean Flats down here. And as you're heading down McLean Flats, you take a right onto White Star Drive. And then an immediate next left on the next road is Upper Bullwinkle Road, which is this road right here. And platted access to this lot is scheduled for this area right here. This area where the cursor is going over is actually on the subject lot, Lot 5. However, it's an access easement to the benefit of this lot right here. And pursuant to this plat, the platted access then curves off to the east and then accesses the building envelope right here. In 2013, there was a land use application for a site plan, not by the current applicant, but by a different owner at that time. And the site plan in that application in 2013 made a couple of different requests. One was to build a single-family residence, but in that request, the applicant had requested to change this platted access and to use a northern access off of Upper Bullwinkle. And at that time in 2013, the W/J Metro District also raised objections to this access, and the applicant at that time subsequently amended their application to use a western access. And I'm going to just scroll through another plat here. And in 2013, the application was approved, and an amended plat was filed and recorded. This amended plat here enlarges the building envelope and also enlarges the area where the applicant would take access off to the west. I'm going to scroll through one more plat here, and this was the final approved site plan in 2013. And the reason this is important to know is that it provides background as to the history of this parcel. And in fact, this is still a vested approval with community development and the land use code. And the subject application that was heard by the hearing officer in 2015, most recently, changed this site plan. And in that application, the applicant, who is now Richard Wax and Associates, requested that the site plan be amended with a different footprint for a house, and then also changed access to the north of Upper Bullwinkle Road. And for reference to, in the transcripts and in staff memo and in this presentation, you'll hear a couple different accesses thrown around. This one we're commonly referring to as the western access, and this is where the cursor is pointing right here. And then to the north would be the northern access that we're referring to. Okay. So in general, there at the hearing officer meeting, there was a lot of discussion about access points and where access would be taken. And in the application, the applicants requested to use a northern access, and that's an access off Upper Bullwinkle Road. And at the hearing, staff we heard from different referral agencies, namely the Aspen Fire Department. And in objection to the northern access off Upper Bullwinkle Road, W/J requested that the platted access be maintained. And with all these considerations and comments made, staff had to make a recommendation to the hearing officer. And our recommendation was that the western access be maintained for the final single-family residential use of the property and for construction purposes. And the northern access that the applicant was requesting would also show up on the site plan and would be in the capacity of an emergency vehicle access. And the reason we made that recommendation to have these two different access points was that we heard from Brian Nichols, who at the time was the fire marshal for Aspen Fire Protection District. And there was an analysis done between the western access and the northern access off of Upper Bullwinkle. And at the hearing, it was represented that the northern access, which is now shown on the current site plan that was approved by the hearing officer, was the quote-unquote safer access and better access for a couple different reasons. One of the reasons was that White Star Drive and Upper Bullwinkle are maintained and plowed roads, and the western access that shows up on the plat and was previously approved is not maintained as a plowed road by the Metro District. So that was one point. Another point was that there is also a fire hydrant in the northwest corner of the subject lot, and this northern access provides a better access distance for the fire department to get to the hydrant and hook up to it in case there was an emergency. And for those reasons, the northern access was considered the safer and better access. And in staff's recommendation, acknowledging that this is a safer access and better access, and acknowledging the concerns of increased traffic and what you'll hear today from the Metro District as their concerns with this northern access, Staff thought it would be a good idea, as we said, the final residential use and construction use would be the western access, and that an access to the north for emergency purposes only would be constructed and gated, and the fire department would use that in emergency capacity only. That was our recommendation, and the hearing officer did not go with staff's recommendation and decided to approve the applicant's request as noted in her decision with recitals and conditions. And after that, the W/J Metro District filed a timely appeal and provided transcripts of the hearing, which are in your packet, and for your review. And subsequent to that, which is not in your packet, were 2 letters that were provided by Paul Tadoon, who is here representing the Metro District, and then John Case, who is assisting and representing Richard Wax and Associates. And I emailed those to the board.
They just came through, so I haven't
Okay.
had a chance. I
So-
just, for some reason, just got them.
If anybody wants those, I've got them hard copy, sounds like Patty does.
Yeah, I'd rather do that than do this.
Okay, that sounds fine.
Just binged and came
And
through.
then George and Michael, do you want these 2? No, you got them. Okay.
I'll look at them.
So that's the background and where we are with the appeal and what was decided upon for this lot by the hearing officer. And as always, staff has to make a recommendation on an application we have, and we have recommended that the board deny the appeal, and for the simple reason that we have no reason to believe at this time that the hearing officer abused her discretion or denied due process or any of the aspects that are outlined in the land use code.
And when you made that recommendation, did you consult the county attorney?
Not on that specific recommendation, but historically, in appeal situations, staff normally does deny the appeal unless we hear differently from the county attorney. And there's one other aspect I want to bring up too, and I wrote about it a little bit in the staff memo, is that intertwined within all of this information in this large packet that you have is also these letters from the attorneys and an idea of authority and jurisdiction over roads in the W/J Metro District. And the applicants and the appellants who are here will probably discuss that today. And hopefully John Ely can assist us in answering some of the questions that become a legal issue.
Okay, any questions for Mike?
No, good.
So none at this point, so I'll turn this over to the appealant.
Thank you,
Just
Mr.
identify yourself for the record.
My name is Wayne Etheridge. I live at 0489 Upper Bullwinkle. I'm a director of the W/J Metropolitan District. And if I could, I'd like to introduce some folks. This is Paul Jones. Paul is a longtime member of the W/J Metro Board. This is Paul Tadoon, who is our attorney. Nina Etheridge, who also lives at 0489 Upper Bullwinkle. Nice convenience for me. Anyway, Jeff Pendarvis is here. Jeff is a former Metro Board member and a neighbor of mine up at Upper Bullwinkle. And Ben Elmore is the district attorney. I know, I'm sorry, I've got attorney on my mind. District engineer, thank you. We think I understand your time is limited, and thank you for the time you've given us. We think there are 3 issues. The first, and it's an overriding issue, is the issue of jurisdiction. Who owns and controls the roads? We will present evidence today based on documentation from the district and from Pitkin County, for that matter, regarding that issue. We think the overriding error that was made by the hearing officer was the failure to address the jurisdictional issue. We did raise that as a district in the meeting. It is my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, at some point that that issue was not addressed with the county attorney. The second issue is the overwhelming objection to the access, we'll call it the north access onto Upper Bullwinkle, by the entire board of the Metropolitan District and a significant number of our neighbors in Upper Bullwinkle. And the third aspect is the hearing officer decision. If she lacked jurisdiction, that is an overriding error, and I think the other two will fall into place. And at this time, unless there are other people who would like to make some comments, I'd like to introduce Paul Tadoon, our attorney, and have him present the case for jurisdiction. I think that may be the best way to approach it from our standpoint, if you have objections.
Yeah, any questions for Wayne at this point?
No, good.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm, as Wayne said, Paul Tadoon, and Nina Etheridge is an assistant of mine. And when the district learned about the decision of the hearing officer, time was running out, and I was consulted. We felt that in order to preserve the jurisdiction issue, an appeal had to be taken immediately. And the reason the appeal was taken is because it's the function of the Metropolitan District to have jurisdiction over the roads. So the appeal is primarily for the purpose of confirming the jurisdiction of the Metropolitan District over what are publicly dedicated roads. And the exhibit that's been put on the screen is the Metro District service plan with regard to roads. The Metropolitan District was chartered in 2004 to administer and maintain various infrastructure improvements and utilities at the urgence of the then owner of the property, and it was presented to the Board of County Commissioners by resolution number 54, 2004, which was approved on 2 readings. So there was an opportunity for a public hearing, and the significance of that is that I was told that sometimes the county doesn't accept roads unless it's by ordinance. So a resolution with 2 hearings would be the equivalent of an ordinance. And essentially, the creation of the district reflects what would be practical and efficient governance. And that's what we're talking about here, governance. Who should be responsible for the roads? Should it be the hearing officer on the one hand, actually substitute hearing officer, because the hearing officer that normally serves for the county wasn't present at this hearing, or 5 elected directors from the Metropolitan District. And on the same side of that equation is the recommendation of the Planning Department to maintain the western access. So why is the access so important? I was thinking just putting it up here. Okay. And I would walk it. Oh.
Well, we can't see it.
What would be? I'll hold it right up here. To see my ugly face. There you go.
So pictures don't always tell the full story. It'd be helpful if you could walk around and see what we're talking about. But this is the western axis. And contrary to Mike's representation that it's not maintained by the district, it is maintained by the district and plowed by the district. It may not be used that much because of who's living there, but it is maintained by the district. If you look at the exhibit, you will see all the roads that the service plan approved by the county and as recommended by the owner of the subdivision at that time, placed under the auspices of the W/J Metropolitan District. What we have over here, just for purposes of reference, is the area of access. This is leading off of McLean Flats Road, and it goes to the left. And what we have right here is Bullwinkle Circle. Bullwinkle Circle effectively is a promenade used by the residents of the White Horse, not the White Horse, but the W/J residents. And there's an awful lot of pedestrians walking on the road, children riding bicycles, people just meandering up and down. And if you went there in the morning and in the evening, you would see that there's a tremendous amount of traffic. And there are a number of reasons for that. That's because in the back of the subdivision, that's where most of the residents reside. And here in the front is where they recreate. Now, at the bottom is Bullwinkle Circle, looking out from Byers Court. And what we have here is a stop sign. And the applicant put up some trees and put up some pedestals that perhaps would be a gate without contacting the Metropolitan District. And you can see why it's so important for the Metropolitan District to have jurisdiction over this road, because this completely blocks the stop sign. In fact, who has jurisdiction for these speed limits and so forth? It's the Metropolitan District. So this is a very important jurisdictional question. So this lot that we're talking about, Lot 5, was purchased on May 11th, 2015, about 6 months ago. It had gone through 2 land use processes, and the access was the western access. And the board of the district is concerned for the safety of its residents. It's also concerned about maintenance of the road, as Ben Elmore can explain. And he's here. Ben Elmore is the district engineer. And can I have him make a brief presentation?
Sure.
Go ahead.
One of the other concerns is leaving the construction traffic off of the western access. I know that the proponent was saying that they would try and keep traffic off of that as long as they could, but there's no definition about what as long as we can. So that's another reason for not wanting it up there. The district also has a capital improvement budget that was started at the beginning of the formation of the district for maintenance as well as replacement of the roads that then we just readdressing that in this last year and are maintaining a capital improvement budget to replace all these roads as they deteriorate in the future. So if we are going to be responsible for the maintenance as well as the replacement, we also should have jurisdiction.
So I know from my experience representing homeowners associations and metropolitan districts, that what occurs in a construction site where you have a house that's going to be about 7,500 feet, there's a lot of construction traffic, very heavy duty. And the access that is being proposed along here is going to suffer from all of that construction activity. So who has jurisdiction over that? Who's to pay for that? And if, for example, a property owner needs to access the road, what about the utilities under the road? Who has responsibility and jurisdiction for that? If we listen to the applicant, no one has jurisdiction. So we think that this is a threshold issue.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is the property, Mr. Wax's property, in the Metro District?
Yes.
So he will be paying into the Metro District as everybody else does?
It's been in the Metro District since the...
I want to make sure that parcel, because that's the old Wink Jaffe House parcel, isn't it?
No.
It's the old tree farm up there.
Oh, the old tree farm behind it, okay. And the other question I have is, maybe I'm lost in all this information, but
Right.
what is the actual error that you're claiming that the hearing officer made?
That the hearing officer has no jurisdiction to grant an access on the roads that are the responsibility of the
Metro
district without having the Metro District's consent.
Okay.
And without having an application being submitted, because the Metro District has rules for road cuts.
Right, so this.
And road impact fees and other rules and regulations to make sure that what occurs is for the benefit of the total universe of residents, not for a self-interested, and I just say this because it's obvious, a self-interested developer who's trying to maximize development.
So the specific issue is jurisdictional, whether or not the hearing officer had the jurisdiction to make a decision without the consent of the Metropolitan District.
Correct, because of all the consequences.
Okay, so that's actually what we're looking at here, not the stop sign or the building, but we're looking at that issue as the error made.
Well, they are ancillary. Yes.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I understand that, but it's supportive of, but the actual issue is the jurisdictional one.
Right.
So, let me just,
Yeah, I'm done.
let me just tag on to that real quick. So, the issue is jurisdiction. You noted that you've got a speed limit sign on the entrance. How's that enforced? Who enforces that?
It would be the Metro District.
And what powers do they have to enforce that?
Our service plan, which was adopted by the county, gives us the right to manage the road. We also, and Ben Elmore can address that, in our rules and regulations, we have control over curb cuts, which this would be. As far as how it's managed, it's frankly done. Sometimes I'm the guy who stops people and says, would you please slow down, their kids, their dogs, their names up here. We don't have a traffic enforcement officer. We live in affordable housing. The reason we don't have more board members here today, and they express their regrets they couldn't be here, is because, we live in affordable housing. Most of us work for a living. I'm taking time off from work, Paul's taking time off from work. So it is done, but we don't have a specific individual, if that's your question, George.
Right, so I'm curious, so if someone was speeding through there, you would ask politely, but if that continued, would you then call the sheriff?
Yes.
And then the sheriff would take over, even though it's within Metro District, they would use their powers?
The sheriff has broad powers on to address those issues. Hasn't been necessary. We have used the services of animal control fairly recently, as a matter of fact. But there is language, both in the service plan, that says it's the responsibility of the district to own, Ben, you might address that, and manage the roadways. So I don't think there's a question about jurisdiction, but obviously that's why we're here. There seems to be that issue is, for whatever reason, is out there. We haven't had to address it. I'm sorry, Patty.
That's okay. I know you're behind there.
We haven't had, frankly, the need to get this point, and it's unfortunate that we are, because these lots sat vacant because of the recession for a long time, and suddenly there's been an incredible flurry of activity, and the issue of jurisdiction came up as a result. It's the first time we've had a question about jurisdiction. The claim of ownership, because it's on the applicant's property, is bogus because it's an easement. We're the easement holder. We own the road. I don't think that, and Paul can certainly address that, I don't think that argument has any weight whatsoever, but it was given quite a bit of weight by the hearing officer, and we either own it or we don't, and that's the issue. And we believe that there's plenty of documentation indicating that we own it. And we've been maintaining and paying for these roads and providing capital reserve funds for a decade in good faith, and I was frankly surprised this came up, and that the county has asserted jurisdiction over one small area, which is the ability to allow access, which I think is in contradiction to our service plan and to our rules and regulations. That's why I'm here.
Yes. So is the public allowed on these roads?
I'm sorry, what?
Is the public allowed on these roads?
Yes.
So you allow the public to?
Yes. Well,
so there's no restriction in terms of who can use this road?
No, they were publicly dedicated by the owner of the subdivision at the time that the plat was filed, and they were accepted by the county as public roads, which always presents a quandary in a situation where roads are publicly dedicated but not maintained by the county. So in this instance, the Metropolitan District was created. With regard to the issue of enforcement, what typically happens in those districts that I represent is we might issue an order to show cause and impose a fine and penalty if someone is found guilty of speeding. In addition, we might collaborate with the Pitkin County Sheriff's Department and set up a speed trap or something that could photograph the car and enforce it that way as a publicly dedicated right-of-way.
So you're saying this is a public road?
These are public roads that are under the auspices of the W/J Metropolitan District that was formed at the insistence or at the urgence or at the behest of the owner of the subdivision at the time, in cooperation with the county. The county approved a service plan, and that service plan is the document by which the roads are maintained and the utilities are maintained in the district, and, as you know from special districts and your relationship with special districts, taxed. So it's really that simple, because if you don't have, if the county's not maintaining jurisdiction, who is? Well, is it just going to be a free-for-all? You know, where the roads are deteriorated and they know the rules and regulations regarding the roads. But it becomes more intricate when you think about the fact that someone is going to tear up the road and they have to replace it in a certain fashion. If they're going to affect a utility, for example. And that's why
isn't that your prerogative then, to say these are the standards?
Oh yes, and there are standards. There's a whole, I've got here all kinds of rules and regulations that talk about road impact fees, that you need to have a road cut permit, anything that the county would do similarly. And in terms of what occurred at the hearing, again, as I say, on the one hand you have a hearing officer and the applicant, and on the other hand you have elected officials of the Metropolitan District who represent the whole district. Plus, you have the planning department saying that the roads should remain the way they are. Plus, you had a planning department before that in 2013 where they were trying to change the access. Plus, you have the 2004, the planning department at that point, and in both of those instances, you have the fire district weighing in and not objecting to the access the way it's presented on the plat. So we think good governance is that if the county doesn't think, the county attorney doesn't think that the county has that the Metro District has jurisdiction, at least as a matter of comedy, should defer to the Metro District because it represents the greater universe of interest.
But the hearing officer didn't subvert any of your standards for the way you
It wasn't
maintain.
even considered. In fact, if you look at the record, I can give you all the Bates numbers. Every time there was a request to cross-examine, it was denied because the hearing officer thought that this was a land use hearing, where you have the applicant makes a presentation, and then anybody who has a comment would make a comment. It was really an adversarial proceeding where the district representatives, I wasn't there. In fact, again, I didn't hear about this until the last minute when the time for appeal might have run out. They weren't allowed to cross-examine. And then if you look at the record, and again I gave you the Bates numbers, there's all kinds of confusion over who owns the road. And what is the relationship of the W/J Homeowners Association versus the White Star Ranch's jurisdiction. And whether it was an easement. If you listen to what the applicant was proposing, he said that Bullwinkle Drive goes across our property, which it does, and so we have the right to do anything that we want as a matter of property rights. But that's not the law, and I hope that John will agree with me in the memorandum of law that I circulated that I thought you would have had in preparation for this meeting, discussing that the roads were dedicated to the public, accepted by the county on those instances, and that the whole service plan in the 100 and some pages that you represented, it's right, it's all there. I can go through it if you would like, and I can recite all the jurisdiction that was given to Metro District.
Well, let me ask you, Paul, was part of that jurisdiction the right to deny anyone access to the road?
Well, no, I don't think that any governmental entity can deny access, but you can regulate it. In other words, it isn't no matter where you want to have it because of all the other considerations. It's the same as if the county maintained the roads.
So
it's implied.
your argument is that the hearing officer subverted your right to regulate the use of Bullwinkle Circle.
Yeah, if you look at the transcript, you won't even see that this very important jurisdictional issue was even considered.
Could I add, I was at the hearing, so was Jeff Pendarvis. We specifically, the district board, specifically raised the issue of jurisdiction. And we were not allowed to cross-examine staff. That could have cleared up some of the issues. It was an adversarial hearing. I was surprised at how it was conducted. That's not why we're here. We're here because the issue of jurisdiction was not addressed and I believe should have been addressed by the hearing officer. Certainly, as a member of the board, I need to know what my rights and responsibilities are. We believe, based on our rules and regulations, it is quite clear, and we're surprised that we're at this point. You know, I love Paul. We've had to hire an attorney because of this, but we need to get the jurisdictional issue resolved. If the county wants to assert jurisdiction over other areas, such as paying for the roads in the future, that'd be a great relief to us. That's not why we're here. We want to understand why our service plan and our rules and regulations are not being honored by the county, and specifically by the hearing officer in this case.
So I just think it's a question of perhaps no homework having been done on it, because granted, it takes a little bit of effort by someone with my background.
No homework on the part of who?
On the part of the hearing officer and perhaps on the part of the planning staff, because they have a tendency to look at these things from a land use perspective, and we're not denying that the county has land use authority. To find the service plan, to understand what it means, to focus on the dedication of rights of way that appear in a plat, all set forth in my memorandum, it takes just a little bit of effort. And you know, when you're looking at it from a practical aspect, you might say, well, you know, it doesn't register. And so that's why we filed the appeal and threw at you in the appeal the district service plan.
Going back to the issue of the sheriff, you're saying that the sheriff has jurisdictional authority over these roads. The sheriff could come in and write somebody a speeding ticket, which gives him jurisdictional authority.
I think
That's what you said, pretty much.
right. I think that's the case because I think your sheriff has jurisdiction over all public roads. But in addition to that, the board has the authority to impose rules and regulations. And so if someone is using the roads in a fashion that is contrary to the regulations, the district can impose a fine.
You have the authority to it.
Huh?
Okay, but yeah, that's separate from my question, because you would have the authority. But specific to the sheriff, you're saying they have jurisdictional authority, and as an arm of the county, then, that tells me that the county then has some jurisdictional authority over the use of those roads also. Just to get that out there.
There's a separate issue between the sheriff with broad statewide powers versus jurisdiction over road cuts and ownership of the road. And again, I don't think there's any question, based on our service plan, it said the word own all facilities is included in that service plan. And in our rules and regulations, curb cuts are the responsibility of the district, not the county. So there are overlapping jurisdictions where the sheriff is concerned. I don't believe that occurs as far as roads are.
I'm just talking use of the road.
But if you, one last point, and Mike, I just want to commend you. I thought you did a superb job in outlining this. I thought you did a really good job explaining it because it could be considered to be a complex issue. But it really is a question when you think about it. What is good governance? Is it to have some neutron floating around, electron all on its own out there, or is it to take a number of people who are elected by a neighborhood to sit in judgment on these and decide what's in the best interest of the whole neighborhood? And that's basically the function of the metropolitan district. And even if you were to agree with the applicant, who will speak here shortly, that they can have the right to do anything that they want to do, because that's basically their position, as a matter of property rights, and that the county has the authority to do it, wouldn't the governance say we'll defer to this other elected body that can focus on these issues rather than take it upon yourself or ignore it altogether?
Okay, thank you. Any other comments you want to add into the record?
I'd like to make a comment in regards to safety.
Jeff, could you just identify?
Sure, Jeff Pendarvis, 0440 Upper Bullwinkle. One of the key points of the applicant, and it was one of the things that Brian Nichols kind of hung his hat on, was proximity to the fire hydrant. So up there at the intersection of Bars Court and Upper Bullwinkle, there's currently a fire hydrant located. And they ran some calcs and said that it's a more direct access if they were to have the new driveway cut to the north, turn on to Upper Bullwinkle, and access the fire hydrant that way, as opposed to coming out the westerly access to the building envelope, back around onto White Star, back on the Bullwinkle. So, you know, if you run the numbers that way, it probably makes sense. But what that does is the other piece of property, the triangle there, the old Jaffe property, which we refer to the pot house, because they grow pot there, is the, there's no fire hydrant that serves that property. So at the last Metropolitan Board meeting, I requested the board to look at what it would take to extend a fire hydrant through the access easement onto the western access proximity that would service both lots. Because just as recently as this past summer, there was a fire. The occupants of the old Jaffe property did some burning there, and it for a while looked like it was out of control fire. They've done some limited mitigation to a bunch of dead trees that are there, but you've got a wooden structure. And so my point is, if the applicant has the north access onto Upper Bullwinkle to get to the fire hydrant, that might benefit that property. However, it doesn't solve the larger issue that the district is faced with, because the Jaffe property is then on an island and it doesn't have access to a hydrant. So what I proposed to the board, and I think they're considering and looking at the possibilities and what it would take to extend the fire hydrant that would serve then both properties, and that would eliminate the issue that the applicant then had with access to the fire hydrant system, and then also serve the other property. And I think it's good use of the Metro District's funding to deal with a larger safety issue.
All right, that's another issue, and hopefully you'll be able to resolve that issue. But that's not why we're here today.
But it is the overriding, their position was all about safety, and I think that, and Brian Nichols acknowledged to me outside of the meeting that that was a good plan. In the meeting, he would not acknowledge that for whatever reason. So I think if we sat down with the fire department, we proposed that with a real extension of the fire hydrant to service both properties. There's no denying that that's a more safe alternative than to just a curb cut that gets a slightly shorter distance to one property.
Ben Elmore with Zancanello, the engineer. That was also proposed in the 2013 objection. The issue of fire came up, and at that point in time in that process, we discussed and proposed putting in additional fire hydrant, removing it. And also in the objection letter to the original application, we proposed that we would address the fire issue as a district. So it's something that's been on the table since 2013.
Okay.
And can I make one last comment in regards to the maintenance? I've been on the board since 2006. I had to resign earlier this year due to some personal issues, but that westerly access was always maintained by the district until the occupant of the Jaffe property put up a gate which limited our access to the road to perform maintenance. So, you know, at the time it was more or less unoccupied, the space. And, you know, the district is willing and able to perform maintenance, but no one was living there who wanted service. So I think once that's occupied, and if that people that live there want service, the board is definitely willing to provide service.
In fact, we made that commitment in the public hearing regarding the hearing, with the hearing officer.
Okay. Wayne, anything else or at this point?
Can I ask a question? So this gate that's on the westerly access,
It's no longer there.
It was
no longer
removed by
there?
the applicants of number 5. They took it out apparently.
okay, but it was unilaterally put in, even though it was under your jurisdiction?
It was put in by the Triangle property, the pot house. And, you know, I think quite frankly, Michael, nobody wanted confrontation with them.
And that is an access easement for benefit of the Old Jaffe property and Lot 5. It's not one of our roadways, if that's your question.
I thought it was one of your roadways.
It's a platted access for lot number 5. We will maintain it.
I thought
plow
you
it.
said you
Right.
had maintained it.
Yeah, we will. We have
Had
been plowing
maintained it in the past.
It is not paved.
And then someone
One
came
at a
in.
time, John. Wayne has the floor.
Well, actually, let me
Okay.
defer to Jeff because he preceded me on the board, has more history on it than I do.
Okay, so a tenant came in, that property was vacant for roughly 2006 until, I'm gonna say 2012. 2012, someone moved in there, started taking up occupancy residency, said they had a lease with the property owner who was AWOL. They started operation as a pot farm. We contacted Pitkin County with some concerns. Pitkin County basically got back to us and said, we're not gonna take any responsibility for the activities at the house there. We talked to the owner about his activity, or the tenant. The tenant said, you know, I'm doing what I wanna do, I can do whatever I wanna do. And along those lines, somewhere in between 12 and 13, he erected a gate. We said, you know, we're not gonna plow anymore, and he said, that's fine. So it was discussed, it was attempted by the board to maintain the historical maintenance, and that single tenant, who was the only one who accessed the road and utilized the road, said he did not want service. That was Paul Chichester.
Okay, but let me get to the point, which is, at least the point I was trying to ascertain. The western access is under your jurisdiction.
Ben can clarify.
It's an access, but it's not like the roads that we maintain. In other words, we maintain it as a part of the district responsibility. Snow plowing, we snow plow driveways throughout the district. Everyone's driveway or access is plowed. And from a snow plowing point of view, yes. From actually owning the road, that's not a road, it's an access easement. And it actually wasn't built on, when you talk about the gate, it was not on district easement property. It was on Lot 5 property, but an easement through Lot 5 property to what's called Parcel C, or the triangle lot, and Lot 5. But in terms of ownership, it's just an easement for us, and they can deny us, like, we don't want you to have your driveway plowed, so, okay, we're not gonna service you if you don't want it, which is what happened.
Just as anybody else in the district can deny, say, we don't want you to plow our driveway.
Okay.
George, it's not an easement dedicated to the district, unlike the other roadways. If that gets
Yeah,
your
that's
question.
essentially what I'm
Yes.
trying to
Yeah.
ascertain here. So, okay.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
All right, thank you. Let's hear from the applicant now.
What do you want us to do?
Just move back and let them move.
Okay.
I think that's,
Good afternoon, I'm John Case, I'm an attorney and I represent Lot 5 and Richard Brax. I'm here with Jeff Davis and Vince Carter. from Lot 5. My involvement in this is pretty recent. They know the history much better than I do of what's happened out here. My focus is more the legal issues. And as the Metro District was telling you, jurisdiction is an issue. But it's not spelled out in the service plan that the Metro District has. The Metro District is a special district created pursuant to statute. The statute grants them powers that they can assume and that special districts can have. One of them is street improvements. And when you look at the service plan, they are charged with the management and maintenance of the roads. But nowhere in the service plan does it say that they will determine where the access from a lot of a member, and Lot 5 has been a dues-paying member of the district, I believe, since the inception.
Are there dues or is there taxes?
The what?
There's dues for the Metropolitan District and taxes for the Metropolitan?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Lot 5's been there.
And how are the dues assessed?
Annually, I think.
No, but on what basis is the amount decided?
I can't say.
By the Metro Board.
I would let the Metro Board executive answer
Yeah.
that question. I don't know how they're assessed, based on lot size or house size or amount of anything, I don't know.
Yeah.
The Metro
The
Board?
mills are determined by the Metro District, as is the fee, which is applied quarterly.
So there's a tax bill.
There's a tax bill and a service.
And then the dues are like a homeowners association dues, is that?
No, they're Metro District dues. It's just the way it was set up is that there would be revenues coming from two sources, one from tax and one that was a fixed amount, which would be divided up quarterly.
A fixed amount meaning that there's a certain amount divided up by the number of residents?
No, the free market lots pay 3 times the amount that the non-free market lots pay. And it was kind of a compromise between having everybody pay the same amount and everybody be taxed according to, the assessed value of the property. So that's how it's done. So we have revenues from both.
You have revenues, and are they spent differently?
No.
No.
They're all put in one pile?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so I talked to John Ely a little about this morning, and we were talking about it in terms of curb cuts. But as you can see from the pictures, it's really not a curb cut. It's just a question of where the driveway is going to join the road.
So you mean access?
Yeah.
Access of the driveway
access,
to
right.
whatever road?
Right. Somewhere it's got to come out on a district road, right? So I think the legal question is, does the Metro District get to determine where that point is as part of their ability to manage the roads? And I don't think that's spelled out in the service plan anywhere. The district, for example, couldn't say that we're not going to allow you to access the road anywhere. And why would the obligation to maintain the roads include determining that point at which the driveway would join the road? To me, it looks like a land use issue that the county decides whether it's land use code and part of the site plan, and there are specific provisions of the code dealing with driveways and rights of way. But the second point I would make is that if the jurisdiction over the location of where the access joins the road is not clear, then it's not really grounds for appeal. Because this appeal is not a reconsideration of the merits of all that the hearing officer heard. The grounds for appeal are limited to a clear and demonstrable error. And I don't think you can find that the hearing officer made a clear and demonstrable error here, because the service plan does not expressly say that the district has that right. So those are my basic points. One, I don't think the district decides where the driveway joins the road is going to be. I don't think that's part of the scope of road management maintenance. I think that's a county land use issue. But my second point is that at a minimum, it's not a clear issue, and thus not a clear error and not grounds for appeal. And I also emphasize, and you'll hear from Jeff and Vince also, that Lot 5 is the first lot on this road, and where it goes down to Bullwinkle Circle.
On what road are you talking about? Or you say it's the first lot on this road?
On Upper Bullwinkle Road, right,
Upper.
so as you come in. So the residents,
It's also on White Star
it's
Drive
bounded
too.
by both.
Right.
And Upper Bullwinkle actually goes through this Lot 5. But the residents who are further down aren't going to get the daily in and out of whatever is developed on this lot, because they're further down the road. They'll be driving by it, going in and out, but Lot 5 won't be driving by them to access their lot. Lot 5 is a big lot, fairly flat, it's 7.8 acres, there's plenty of construction parking on the lot. All the dirt from the side is to remain on the site, so there shouldn't be heavy truck traffic. They're going to keep it for landscaping and berm. And what the Metro District is trying to do here is tell this lot owner, Lot 5, that they can't access the easement that the hearing officer approved to get to this road that is a public road, simply because they don't want it for their own reasons and their own privacy to have an additional lot. But, you know, the hearing officer heard a variety of evidence, including the fire marshal's recommendation, that the access that the hearing officer approved is the preferred access for a number of reasons, like health and safety. So that was a major reason, I think, for the decision. Anytime a vacant lot gets built, you are going to have some increased use of the road. But I don't think that just because your district maintains the road should mean that you get to deny access or force that access to be in a particular place. I think that's a land use issue. If I'm wrong, as I say, I think that it's at least not clear. And it's not really grounds for a reversal of the hearing officer's decision. To me, if anything, it seems more like the type of action that would be heard by a court, where evidence would be heard and it would be fully briefed. Perhaps it would be a declaratory judgment action, where you ask the court to say, well, given this service plan and these resolutions and statutes, what is the extent of the district's authority to manage roads? Yes, it obviously manages the road, does the plowing, but what about where the lots that are members of this district, what about where their driveways are going to access the roads? Is that within that? I don't think it's crystal clear, and thus I don't think it's grounds to grant this approval.
I have a question. Who, and maybe this is mentioned and I missed it in all this information, who manages the White Star Drive?
White Star Homeowners
In their
Association.
own special district?
Correct.
We are a member of the White Star HOA, actually, so we pay fees both to
Both
WJ
ways.
and to White Star.
And the White Star Metro District Board has not had any issue with?
We have to, as a member of that HOA, we have to go through an architectural review before we do anything, and they were in favor of this westerly access.
We have explicit written approvals from four of the property owners of the WJ Metro District, as well as a formal approval from the White Star HOA endorsing our northerly driveway to Upper Bullwinkle.
You said you had approval from them?
I don't have an approval, I have an endorsement. I have a
Endorsement from the W/J Metro District?
No, from 4 lot owners.
4 lot owners. That's
There was
what-
some commentary previously that said there was a large amount of WJ members that objected. Well, we also have a substantial amount that have endorsed it, as well as is endorsed by the White Star.
Do you know if they're upper level W/J or lower?
They're all on they're all addresses on Buyers Court.
That use that access.
That use that access.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other issues we could address with the boards?
Do you have anything else to add?
I have a couple comments. We're charged these fees at 3 times the rate that the other homeowners are to maintain this road. And that's been since, not previous owners to us even, since inception of the board, owners have been paying, of this lot have been paying these fees. And yet now we're told we can't use this access. How is that fair that you pay for something all this time, and then when you finally go to develop it, you're told, oh no, we're not going to allow you to use it? That's not, in my mind, at all fair. And the other point is that we
we have, we build in a variety of locations. We've dealt with a lot of community development staff, and the staff here in Pitkin County is among the best we've ever worked with. They're professional, they're firm, and they're always fair. And they're the ones that decide these kind of land use issues. And I'd much rather see, I'm hoping this board endorses that, those types of decisions stay with these experts rather than rather than give it to a district which is actually has nothing to do with land use. They have no IGA that specifically says they have land use review at all. So that's my only comment, is that I really think this is was a county issue, and I'd hate to see those powers go away from the county.
So I'm going to ask our attorney, because again, the issue in terms of the appeal is based on who controls the roads, whose jurisdiction is it under. That's really the crux. And so one argument is that the Metro is responsible for the upkeep and the maintenance and the control of the roads. And the other argument is, well, it's part of the county's land use code to look at plats and building sites and how one could safely access. Did I capture that right? I mean, the question is, and we're hearing from two different sides, from two different attorneys. And we sit here sort of as a quasi-judicial board at this point.
That's a fact. All that's true.
And
Good
so,
job, George.
what are your thoughts, comments, recommendations?
Well, it's an interesting issue. It hasn't come up before because, to my knowledge, the county, through its land use development approval processes, has never been at odds with any of the various metro districts within the county. The issue of land use, I think, is fairly separate from the issue of access to the roadways. The county clearly has control over land use matters within its jurisdiction and real property development. As such, the county can issue approvals for development, and those approvals may very well be at odds with other property interests. For example, development of a particular property which proposes access across a neighbor's property on an easement that the property owner, the developer, maintains that they have a right to use. And there is a contested issue at that point. That doesn't necessarily throw out the county's development approval, but it certainly impacts whether or not that development approval can go forward. So the county doesn't have necessarily an obligation to respect other private property rights, but clearly we've always have. We have never taken a position that the private property owners or other entities, particularly a quasi-governmental entity like a metro district, should go duke it out on their own, that we should consider all of those things in conjunction with a development approval, such that once the development approval is afforded, we have a reasonable certainty that that's what's going to happen on the property, and it's not just tossing it out there for future litigation, and we don't care. So, in that regard, I think you're right, George. I think the nub of it comes down to a jurisdictional or a dominion issue over the roads within W/J, as well as this lower portion of White Star, because although the lower portion of White Star is not included within the subdivision plat for WJ, it is included within the service plan boundary for the Metro District. I don't know if there's any relationship back and forth between WJ and White Star, but that much is clear. It seems to me also, the most pertinent documents are the subdivision approval plat, the most recent one, as well as the service plan for the Metropolitan District. Neither of those could have gone forward without the county, and the county approved them both. As such, I think that it would be appropriate to read them in conjunction with each other to interpret them as reinforcing each other rather than being at odds with each other. So the plat clearly contains a dedication of the roads to the public and made through the county. Somewhat old school language, not unusual to be contained on a plat. The acceptance of the dedication, which is on the same page of the plat, signed off on by the county, is agreed to but conditioned with the proviso that as part of the acceptance of that dedication, the county shall not undertake maintenance of such roads. Said dedication does not extend to utilities, waste disposal, or any service facilities. So in taking it for the benefit of the public, the county makes it clear that we're not going to do anything with the road. At the same time, or generally contemporaneously as the subdivision plat, we have a service plan. And the service plan pulls back a little bit further in the introduction section of the service plan, which is page 3 of that document. I'm not sure what the sequence page is within the internet loaded materials for the item. But at any rate, on page 3 of the service plan, it referenced the roads within the service plan as being managed by the district. In fact, that management extends not only to the various roads, but all other infrastructure systems, wastewater, water deliveries, potable water delivery systems, etc. The service plan goes on to state, page 8, within section 3C, having to do with the road systems, that the district will construct and maintain all new roads, and that the district will be responsible for annual maintenance of all internal road systems and the stated cost. And then finally, on section Roman numeral 2 of the service plan, subparagraph 2, is an interesting statement. It says the district will own and maintain the facilities and equipment described above, and that description includes a variety of infrastructure having to do with water, wastewater, and road structures. So clearly the documents as a whole, as adopted by the county previously, indicate that there is a deference to the district, that the district is not only going to be doing all the work on this stuff, but to not expect anything from the county in doing so. The statutory construct for metro districts does provide for this. It does recognize that metro districts have the ability to provide for safety protection through traffic and safety controls and devices on streets and highways and at railroad crossings, and that these particular functions are within the penumbra of abilities for metropolitan districts. I haven't had a chance to look at the documents much more than that. I've seen everything that Mr. Case has offered for the record and everything that Mr. Tadoon has offered for the record. I've gone through the material that has been included for the board's consideration through community development. I've tried to do a little bit of additional research and have not found anything that would inform further as to this issue of dominion over the roads. In other words, if the county lets stand this development approval, and if the owner of Lot 5 attempted to development, could in fact the district enjoin them from proceeding without having an appropriate permit or approval or other form of acquiescence from the district that they can in fact use this road at this point for a driveway access. There might be something in other jurisdictions other than Colorado as well but I can't tell you that. But from the documents that I'm looking at here, it would appear that the intent of the county in the approval of the plat and approval of the service plan was to defer the management and perhaps even ownership of the infrastructure to the district.
So what you're saying, or at least what I was able to capture, the salient points, was that through the service plan that the Metro District has, they have the authority to certainly maintain the roads, and they also have the authority to view how they maintain those roads and the use of those roads from a safety point of view and sort of a protection of the overall district.
Correct.
So that's their charge.
Exactly.
Can I continue that? Did you, or not having the service plan, I don't know, could be in the, that's the other volume.
It's in there somewhere.
Yeah, is there anything in there that actually states that the Metro District will have authority over access on and off of the roads?
Not particularly.
Not specifically that. I truly understand the issues that you've said about maintenance, safety, all of that, but it's kind of a tough one when you have somebody who's been paying into the dues and they want to actually use a road to access their property. But then again, it's a tough one to say that the Metro District hasn't always assumed that they have authority over those kind of issues on and off the road, so.
My name is Jeff Davis. If I can offer some points, please. We approached the Metro District in May with the presentation for the construction of 2 of our properties. We have another piece of property we're constructing. We demonstrated our plans via the elevations as well as the site plan, which clearly showed our driveway as has been approved by the hearing officer. At that introduction, there was no objections to the driveway as is now been approved. As I have been building in Aspen and Pitkin County for a long time, we have to make formal application processes for approvals, building permits and all the various things that we need to do. I offer to you for consideration, if the Metro District is really in control of the road and has this approval ability, then why isn't there some sort of formal approval process in place? Where there's an application, there's a review, there are rules published, there are, things in advance that we would have to adhere to in order to sort of seek such approval. They've already established that this gate that was put on that westerly access was done so without an approval. We removed it because it was on our property and we didn't want it anymore. But that was simply done without any approval, and it prohibited them from maintaining the driveway which they said that they are going to. So if you are going to be a body that offers control, then you need to have mechanisms and processes in place so that way people who want to do something can get it approved.
This is a public hearing. At this point, I'm going to open this up to the public for comments. Anybody wishing to make a comment, if you would just at least stand up and identify yourself. If you want to get grassroots to capture your comments, perhaps just slide, why don't you just slide that little mic.
Do we have an opportunity at some point to offer some more?
Well, right now we're doing public comment, and then we'll bring it back to the board if there's any questions. Yes, so just state your name, please.
For the record, Patrick Crawley, Stan Kloss and Associates. I'm working with Richard Wax and Associates. I would like to point out a part of the service plan on page 17, which talks about intergovernmental relations, states that the district will obtain all necessary land use and building permits from Pitkin County prior to undertaking projects or construction in connection with the district's obligations in accordance with the activities of the district as approved in the service plan. I believe that that is an important point to make, that the service plan recognizes Pitkin County's jurisdiction over the activities of the Metro District.
Can you cite where that is? Because now that I
On
have the
page-
full plan in front of me.
Let's put it up on that.
17. Page 17, which is 84 of your packet.
17, section 1, the bottom of the page?
just gave it to Mike, he's gonna put it on the screen for everybody's use.
Oh, I got it right here.
So it's the second to last sentence. And now that, however you construe this, of what type of activities, but it does speak to the fact that the county has jurisdiction over the activities of the Metro District, whatever those activities might be.
How do you interpret that?
Is that a legal opinion?
Wait, excuse me, is this a public comment?
I'm making a public comment, so that is my public comment. It is not a legal opinion, but it is.
But aren't you representing?
No.
Hey, we're going to keep this in
Sorry.
order, or we're going to have to remove the room here. Are you done with your public comment?
I am done. I would just like to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other people wishing to make a public comment without being interrupted or questioned? And now I'm going to close the public comment and bring it back to the board.
George, if you go on to page 18, top of the page, general responsibilities, John, do you see that? Does anything there be referred to or be applicable to?
The third bullet.
Design, construct, manage, and maintain the road system?
Yes.
So John, Ely, so we set up metro districts, and we just did one recently, not that long ago, to allow that neighborhood to be able to assess themselves, to be able to improve the roads, the water, utility, septic, et cetera. And so we give them that ability to, in essence, govern themselves.
To an extent.
To an extent. And so there's that fine line, to what extent. We certainly still maintain our 1041 ability to look at and review any land use applications and impacts, environmental impacts to the land. So we're this. So we have that ability regardless of the metro district. We are able to override that, their charge, but we give them a certain amount of discretion to be able to handle their own affairs, and they're taxing themselves to do that.
Consistent with the establishment of metro districts, metropolitan districts, in areas where services aren't provided, say, by the county, and a group of affected property owners want to assemble themselves in a quasi-governmental entity, then a metro district is often the perfect selection. It provides for the ability to confer benefits of a variety of different services to a service plan area, a service area. And the provision of those services would be through the district. The district will impose, through the establishment of the mill levy, and through authorization of the people who are affected property owners through their vote, and then decide how that money is to be spent in managing the resources of the district and also in providing those services. So I mean, it's an exercise that's repeated many, many times. It is certainly absent direct government provision of a service, the best way to go about it. There are many metro districts within the county. I would take the position that if, for example, the W/J Homeowners Association or the district itself wanted to relocate one of the roads, to just move it, that they would have to proceed through a review process of the county for a variety of different permits, excavation, earth moving, and a review by the county engineer for the safety of how this road might be constructed. However, in this instance, where there is the activity of just access to the road, who has the ultimate say, is an interesting question. But by looking at the language in the the service plan that was adopted by the county, it would appear to me that that management of the resource, management of the road as the existing road is left to or deferred to or allotted to the Metro District consistent with the state statute.
Michael?
Well, it seems to me that if the service plan would dictate, for instance, how you would join a road. You would, at what grade you would join that road, and what width you would join that road, what sightlines you would join that road. And if those are adhered to, then you satisfy the service plan standards. It doesn't seem to me that there's anything within the service plan that says, and we will, and what we're looking for, and what W/J can't present, which is in the service plan, we will decide, we have ultimate control over who accesses this road. And then on top of that, you have the due situation where some members pay 3 times the amount that other members do. And in expectation of that they're going to have more impacts, but certainly they're part of the district. Clearly they're part of the district. And so, and in terms of mill levies, since they have more property, in essence they would be paying more in the mill levy on top of that. So I just don't see that, I don't see that there was an error made on the part of the hearing officer. I just don't think that, and we haven't in any of our service plans ceded the right of the county to decide where roads shall go, which you just mentioned.
The other thing too, in keeping with those comments, is that a government entity such as a county, or a quasi-governmental entity such as a metro district, is still bound by the same standard of care. In other words, neither can be arbitrary and capricious in determining who or where or something should happen. Ideally, as both you and Patty have mentioned now, there would be some standard such that somebody would know in advance of a request as to how it might be evaluated. But that isn't always the case. In fact, I'm not aware of any other metro district that has that set up. But clearly, if a metro district through its board is acting in a way that's arbitrary or capricious, then it's not going to be upheld. The representations from the district's representatives, and particularly Mr. Tadoon, was a concern for safety and other users on the roads. That's the statement of the district.
And further to your comments, there is, for example, an IGA with the Brush Creek
I was just reading that.
Metro District that I included. In that, there's a specific paragraph about land use decisions, I think paragraph 6 on page 8, in which the county agrees to refer any land use application that comes in to the Brush Creek Metro District and to, in good faith, confer with them. The county then reserves its powers and says, but this doesn't mean we will or won't do anything or that you could veto anything. But they do specifically discuss it. On the other hand, as you pointed out in the service plan, it's not enumerated. It just doesn't say. I mean, they have these general powers to maintain and manage the roads, but as you inquired, it doesn't specifically say, and you get to determine where somebody's access is going to intersect a district road.
Well, I know the county has, when we have access, we have concerns about sight lines, about adjacent driveways, and that we're not going to put driveways all along the road, that we're going to put them in some sort of order that facilitates the safe operation of vehicles on that road. So unless there's something in the service plan that says you shall have a 100-foot sight line to either side of your driveway.
Exactly, and that's why I thought it was still part of the land use process.
Yeah.
And the application, that locates driveways based on those types of factors.
Can I, John, and regarding Brush Creek, are those public roads or do they maintain them themselves? I think they maintain them themselves.
Brush Creek.
Yeah, so they've taken over the maintenance and everything, but they do have a very specific IGA for lots of, it stipulates out very clearly lots of the powers of one side or the other.
That was a result over a particular conflict in a review of a development application.
I remember that very clearly, actually. Okay.
So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
In sum up, what I think they're asking you to do on this appeal is to make a decision you really can't make on jurisdiction. I think, as was pointed out, that might be a decision made by a court, but there's a lot of relevant documents and statutes, and I don't think that you're in a position to say, well, this is a clear and determinable error by the hearing officer as grounds for an appeal. So maybe they could sue us and enjoin us. That's not the issue, I think, for the board to decide.
So back to Michael's point, if the Metro District had in place in their service plan some of these specifics in terms of dealing with site, elevation, access, then it would be very clear that they would be in control of the final decision. But since it's not,
If there
it's
was
not
something in
stated-
there particularly related to road access, certainly.
Road access.
The statements that are in the plan are of a broader context, management.
Right.
In fact, what are they? Ownership, maintenance, and management are the terms that are in the service plan.
But not access. So
Or if
that-
they had a clause like this one, like the Brush Creek, that was specific to land use approval process. There is no stipulated process for that as part of the part of the W/J Metro District.
Okay,
which
I'm
is
going to
too
just
bad.
allow one last counterpoint point, and we're going to bring it back to the board for decision here. Paul?
And I can do this from here. Thank you. First of all, the deed into this property references specifically the W/J District Service Plan. In accordance with the service plan, I can hold up to you I don't know how many pages this is, but it's,
The service plan?
30.
Yeah, but we just need a pertinent part of that you're doing.
30 pages of rules and regulations for the Metropolitan District. There is a permit process in these rules and regulations. They just didn't go through the process of inquiry.
What does it say? Can you read
What's
it
the
to us?
section?
Well, it's not in your materials.
It's
It's
not
not
part
in the
of the
service
service
plan, it's the rules and regulations of the Metropolitan District that are authorized by the service plan. As a jurisdictional, quasi-governmental entity, you can pass its own rules and regulations. They're not of record, but if you went in front of the Metro District, they would produce 40, 30 pages of rules and regulations. And in there would be an application process for a permit for a road cut. Okay? Now, the other, in terms of whether or not the decision is arbitrary and capricious, I just heard that the planning staff in Pitkin County is the best that there is. This decision wasn't made by the planning staff because this isn't a decision of the planning staff. The county wanted the western access to remain the way it is. That was the recommendation. I can point that out to you in the proposed resolution, the resolution that they proposed, as Mike mentioned earlier. And we have everybody on one side. We have a history of the county deferring to metropolitan districts. Well, as John mentioned, always the county defers, except in this one instance. And it's not by the county, it's by this hearing officer, who was a substitute hearing officer. And there was no mention in the decision about the Metropolitan District Service Plan.
Okay, thank you.
I would just point out, as Paul said, the rules and regulations that he held up, as he said, are not of record. And when you buy the lot, the service plan, of course, is of record, and that's what you read, and that's what you get. And when you get your title commitment, if it's not of record, you're not going to see these rules and regulations.
They're never of record.
Okay.
So we have, I believe, 3 options.
We
Deny
can,
the appeal,
we can reverse,
yeah.
we can modify, or we can remand the decision back. If we remand it back, how does that process work? Does it go back to the same hearing officer, to a different hearing officer? It become more of a complete argument to allow both sides to present?
The county utilizes 2 individuals as hearing officer, and I believe one had a conflict, and that's why this matter was heard by Ms. Oates. So it would go back to that hearing officer. The board can remand it blank, or the board can remand it with instructions or direction. In other words, we'll send this back to you with and require or request that you consider blah, blah, blah as part of your decision, or that you evaluate such and such. So there can be some direction, or rather than just a simple remand.
Yeah. I mean, I'm at the point where I'm thinking that perhaps the best way to move this forward is to remand this back to the hearing officer to allow a more in-depth discussion from both sides, which I heard was not allowed or available the first go-around, and to specifically look at and delve into the service plan and the interpretation of that service plan, and perhaps even to collaborate with the county attorney to try to discern any specific questions. And that's what I would suggest.
Can the hearing officer collaborate with you further?
Well, collaborate may be the wrong word.
Not so much collaborate, but we certainly can discuss, and any discussions that would occur would be available
Discuss and clarify.
to any
The
party
both
or
sides.
the public in general.
Would not be attorney.
No, it would be a private conversation.
Yeah, that sort of reminds me of the Abbott and Costello routine, which is, go ahead, back up kind of approach. I don't really agree with that. I think that if there had been, in that question of jurisdiction, reservation of right to decide what that access is, then I think perhaps that the hearing officer should have considered it, but there wasn't that right, there isn't that right. And I think the service plan is about how to maintain your roads and what methods you will use to maintain those roads, how it will be built and how it will be maintained. It doesn't say anything about access to that road. And I can't see that denying someone access to a road which they're a member of. I think it's quite clear.
So everybody's looking at me. I love being in this seat over here. I believe that this issue should have been discussed as part of the hearing officer's deliberation. And I think that if it had been discussed, I think I know which direction the hearing officer would go, and I think she would stay with the decision that she has made. But I think in all fairness to the Metropolitan District, it needs to have that opportunity to have the hearing officer discuss it, so I'm going to agree with George on remanding it back with those stipulations that the hearing officer specifically look at jurisdictional authority as per the service plan of the Metro District. And, it's like who's on first, and, first on second or on third and back around the baseball field. But I think we need to go in that direction. I'm really supporting that. A lot of it is going towards, I don't want to see any more legal action having to be taken. I think it needs to be fairly vetted for the Metro District.
I guess the only other thing I would offer both sides is if there's ability to come up with some sort of compromise, and that is if at least the staff's recommendation was that this access would just be for emergency fire and safety, and it seems like one of the concerns, at least that I'm interpreting from the Metro District, is the impact of construction traffic, and perhaps if this access were going to be a primary access, the issue of safety. And so if this access would only be utilized for emergency fire protection and not for during the construction and normal use, maybe both sides could come together on that.
I reached out to the applicant about a compromise, and I think it still would be there. I talked to David Johnston the day after the hearing officer,
And he got back to me and said that wasn't an option. So
Okay, well,
think that's understandable.
I just throw that out. We don't need to have comments back. We've got.
If Jeff made one, I'd like to add that we attempted also to compromise and.
Okay, but that's fine.
Okay, so you guys can compromise to compromise.
Sometimes it just takes a little more work to get things done. So, you ready to make a motion?
I think
I had
Mr.
a
Case has.
procedural question, maybe this would go to John, but if you take that tack and you remand this to the hearing officer to consider it, is that just going to bring us back here?
Only if
On
someone.
an appeal of that
Only
decision?
if someone appeals the.
Hearing officer's
It may-
decision.
We could be right back here again.
We could be back with 5 perhaps.
It may, but it may just clarify, and you also may have a different or full board as well to weigh in. So
But
that
if
could
the,
change.
if the issue was that an error was made because the issue of jurisdiction wasn't considered, then that issue would be resolved by allowing the hearing officer to consider jurisdictional authority. So that issue could not come back again because we would resolved it by having the hearing officer take that into consideration. So, in light of that being said, I am going to make a motion to remand back to the hearing officer the decision regarding the Lot 5 White Star LLC site plan review and plat amendment, and with the specifics that the hearing officer take into consideration jurisdictional authority as provided to the W/J Metropolitan District.
By their service plan.
By their service plan. Yes, by their service
Service
plan. By their service plan. Thank you for that clarification. That is my motion.
I'll second it. Any further discussion? So again, you've heard at least our questions, some of our concerns and issues. I would, again, encourage you, both sides, to go back to the table and see if you can come up with agreement. And then if you're able to, then the Metro District can then perhaps resolve some of these other issues that have been brought up. So with that,
Wait.
yes.
Just as an addition to that motion, if it's acceptable to the movement in the second, I would suggest the addition that the board finds that there has been clear and demonstrable error in the failure to consider jurisdictional issues involving the Metropolitan District. And that's the basis of the remand.
Well, I believe that we would have to state that in order to move it forward, or move it, to remand it back.
Forward backwards.
I just think it was an omission. I don't know if it was an error, so.
Error of omission.
An error of omission. I will amend my motion.
I'll accept that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Opposed?
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Nice to see everyone.
Let's take a 15-minute break. What time is it, 3
Are you-
o'clock, 2:15? All right, we're back to our land use public hearing still. Next on the agenda is the code amendment, tree removal. This is the second reading. It had been continued from November 4th. Who's going to start this? Tammy will.
I will. Tammy Cochin, Pitco County Community Development, zoning planner. August 26th, the board voted 5-0 to adopt the code amendments for tree removal. At that meeting, they asked that some of their comments be incorporated into the second reading. And so we incorporated the comments, and those are written in blue in your packets, while the original code amendment is underlined. So a lot of the comments we felt were more appropriate in a tip sheet, such as making it easier to understand what the code was, resources such as going to the county website and looking up the GIS mapping tool to find your parcel. So we felt that that was more appropriate on an informational handout where we could update it and get that out to the public. So I guess we're just asking for the board to approve on second reading. Any additional comments?
George, I have a question.
Yes.
What do we do for enforcement? For issues where someone comes in without a permit and whacks off a bunch of trees in their viewplane without? That's
Well,
a good question.
Yes, it is a land use violation, and we treat it like any other land use violation. If and when we, again, have a code enforcement officer, when those things are reported to us, usually by neighbors, we would send somebody out immediately to review the situation, determine if indeed there has been a violation. And as you know, there was a well-publicized one just recently on Red Mountain. Absent a code enforcement officer, we do that ourselves. That would be Tammy or Lance or Suzanne or Mike or Joanna or whoever is available to run up and evaluate the situation and issue a red tag, which basically means cease and desist what you're doing and come in and try to get the proper permitting. And when the work's already been done, which it usually is by the time it gets reported to us and we're there, there's not a whole lot we can do from an enforcement standpoint other than the fact that what a red tag does is it means no additional permits of any kind are issued for that property until remediation takes place. And then what we do is require that the person go through the proper permitting and remediate to the best extent that we are able to get remediation.
Because I think in the case that you're referring to, their building permits, that's not a point. I mean, they already have their, and that it's difficult to go back. You can't put them back, I mean, literally. So, yeah, it's a tough one because this one would not be allowed by permit, I don't believe, for the devastation and the purpose behind it. So, yeah, I just thought it would be great to get it out there so that I understood the process for somebody who.
And if someone is not a willing participant with us to try to remediate the problem, then in the end, we have nothing we can do but turn it over to the attorney's office to make a determination as to whether or not we're going to try enforcement through other legal means.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Michael? What are the, I'm trying to look for it. There's wildfire mitigation where there's a lot of cutting by roadsides. Does this cover that? Does it permit that?
No, well, within our land use code, there is a whole section on wildfire mitigation. In terms of roadsides, that is done through road and bridge. That's not permitted through us. And
we have a specific process in here for someone who wants to do wildfire mitigation because under, I'm not sure what page it would be in your perhaps page 9 of your thing, tree replacement and permit fee exemption. Under certain conditions, tree replacement will not be required and a permit fee will be waived. And these are conditions controlling parasites, implementing wildfire mitigation as part of a fire district or Pitkin County approved fire mitigation plan. So if someone came in and said, I want to do mitigation, we'd say, okay, we'll work with you on the proper plan, or we'll send you to the fire district to come up with a proper plan, present that plan to us, you're good to go with no fee.
Okay.
And that was one of the important aspects of rewriting this, because that was never clear. Does someone need a permit to do something we want them to do? Do they not need a permit? And we wanted to make it clear that we want you to come to us, get the permit, no fee.
And how do we, I know the city, when you have a tree, a diseased tree, the city will come out. Do we have somebody, we don't have an arborist. So who goes out and says this tree is infected, diseased, parasites, bugs, whatever?
we ask for, in here it states, certified arbor professional.
So they have to bring one in themselves. We don't have somebody that we can
Right.
tap into from the.
Right.
like
correct.
this. But I don't think this, not sure the city still has their arborist, because I know that's been
They do.
utilized a lot lately. They still have
The
one
city,
back?
the city does, we do not.
I know that there's been a lot of issues with the recent fungus in the cottonwoods. Everybody thought their cottonwoods were dead and wanted to cut them all down, which turned out not to really be what needed. So, okay, great.
This
If
is
I
a
didn't
public
catch that.
hearing. Anybody wish to make any comments on this? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring back to the board.
Would you like a motion?
You may.
I'll make a motion to approve the tree removal and land use code amendments. This is second reading.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank
Thanks,
you.
Tammy. Thank you.
Okay, next, our last land use public hearing is a Woodard request for constrained site TDR. And Nancy, you want to, oops, read off? That's Suzanne.
I will. Suzanne Wolf is not here, so I will. And Alan Richmond is here representing the Woodards, who have learned a lot about government today by sitting through your entire meeting thus far, waiting
Well,
for
welcome to the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
waiting for their item, which is not as consequential.
Saving the best for
except
last.
Except for them, it is.
Not
with
as controversial.
And, yeah, not controversial. But their request is for a constrained site TDR. And we have not done one of these for quite a while, but if you'll remember, we have a specific provision in the code that if property that has a development right is determined to be undevelopable under the code, meaning it has aspects about it that the code prohibits development, or if it's severely restricted from development by the code, that they can come forward voluntarily and request in the board's discretion to be granted a TDR in exchange for any future development of that property. And in this case, what we are talking about is the Woodards own piece of property up on Rural Mountain Way in Shieldo Mesa. And this is a little difficult to show you, but right there. So this is Snowmass Creek Road going, this is my finger here, going up valley. This being at the lower end, yeah, this is better. This being the up valley end, this being the down valley end of Snowmass Creek Road. What we're looking at up here is lots in Shieldo Mesa, and this Woodard lot is up high on Rural Mountain Way. And a couple things very important about it that lend support for it to be considered a constrained site TDR, considered for a constrained site TDR, is aside from the fact that it is constrained by critical winter elk habitat and winter elk habitat, is the fact that it is adjacent to and looking over the Windstar Conservation Easement. It's directly adjacent to that, as well as a piece of property that's conserved over here with some development, but a lot of acreage conserved on the Davis Donnelly property. And zeroing in a little further on the property, again, it's not showing real well, but the red line is the property that is outlined here. That's the boundaries of the property. This crossed hatch area up here is critical winter range, and this is elk winter range. Development is prohibited within critical elk winter habitat and range, and also within a quarter mile of. And virtually this entire property is within that critical winter range or within the quarter mile buffer. And that, in association with the fact that the property is up high on the mesa, looking down over the conserved properties are something that we feel definitely gives it justification for meeting the criteria for being considered a constrained lot and to be considered to be granted one TDR for the removal of the development possibility of that property. And just for background, we added a history of the constrained site TDRs that the board has granted in the past, because I thought you might ask that. How many have we granted and when? And there have been a total of 43. But as you see, we really have not even granted one since 2009. So you haven't seen this very recently. But we did grant a good bunch of them to the Crowleys in the frying pan some years ago. And other than that, they have been spread out pretty evenly through the years, but nothing since 2009. But we certainly feel that this meets the criteria because there are portions of the parcel that are impacted by steep slopes. It's within mapped and field verified elk winter range and elk and mule deer summer range. The northern third of the property encompasses a portion of an elk winter concentration area where the code prohibits development, and the remainder of the parcel is within the required 1/4 mile buffer of an elk winter concentration area where also the code prohibits development. And it's in severe wildfire hazard area where that is something that can be mitigated, but it's also certainly a constraint. So the staff is recommending that the board make a finding that this lot is constrained, and we would recommend that you, through your discretion, find that granting one TDR in exchange for development would be appropriate.
Could you put back that other map that you have there, Lance, please? As part of the information provided to us, it states that there are several houses located along and off the lower part of Rural Mountain Way. The parcels are all undeveloped. So that would be the two to that side? Because I don't see any development really up there. And I would assume that they're undeveloped also because they have all these wildlife constraints on them?
Well, I'll let Alan speak to that
It's in
because
Alan's
I
info.
didn't do the site visit since Suzanne was working on this. But I would guess no, the other lots are just waiting their time to be coming in for development. It's not because they're...
Okay, that was my question, how many and why, so maybe Alan can help, we'll point that in Alan.
But just to piggyback off of that, it looks like on this map, wouldn't there be adjacent lots that would then be considered severely constrained and eligible for TDRs?
That's the question I had, because that's kind of what it leads you to.
Because of the 1/4 mile.
Well, yeah, with your other map, it showed that some of those lots obviously cross over that same area as well. So I guess what I was suggesting, or what we're saying is there's probably, this is not going to be the only lot that was going to be considered severely constrained. That may not be developable, and hopefully, if that's the case, that then the owners would come in and request a TDR, because we can't force them to take a TDR.
Right. It's hard to say because it's up to the individual owner. The process, if someone, for instance, even this lot, if the Woodards wish to proceed with development rather than ask for a TDR, they would come in, they'd propose the site plan, an activity envelope. The activity envelope would be found to be in a prohibited area. It would come to you through a takings, and as is typical in a takings, you would, in the end, allow development subject to mitigation. So individual property owners make their own decision. Do I really want to develop this property? Do I want to sell it to someone who would develop it? Or would I like to preserve it and get a TDR? And it's individual determination. And the Woodards have determined that the TDR is a good opportunity for them in their current state.
Do you want me to jump in on this point now or wait?
One second.
I'll wait.
Any other questions for
I'm
Lance?
good.
Now you may.
Oh,
Now
thank
you
you.
can jump.
For the record, I'm Alan Richmond. I'm here representing the owners of the property, who you have met, Kent and Karen Woodard, who are behind me. Both are long-term residents of the county. They've lived in the Aspen area for over 40 years. They bought this property almost 25 years ago in 1991 up on Shield O. They bought it with the expectation that it would be pretty important to them when they reach retirement age. Either it would be a place where when they retired from Aspen, they'd be able to build a home up in Shield O, or it would be an asset to help them pay for retirement. When they came to me this spring, they said this was a time that they really needed to look at what the potential was for this lot. And we actually started the process when I pre-apped this with Suzanne back in the spring. We actually thought this was going to be an activity envelope application, and this was going to be a development property. That's what our original pre-app was for, and the pre-app clearly identified wildlife habitat as a constraint, but until you do the on-site study, you don't really understand the extent to which that factor is going to constrain the lot. We did a boundary survey, and the boundary survey, you want to put that one up? The boundary survey and the GIS map that you were looking at sort of need to be looked at together, but it's not until you get up onto this piece of property that you start to realize just how remote it is. Rural Mountain Way is actually a very well-named piece of road. It's very primitive. It comes off of the you take the road up Shield O to the very top, where you basically end up on the mesa, on the flat that was the big ranch property. And then Rural Mountain Way sort of meanders up to the very top of Shield O. And when you get to this property, the road is, to call it primitive, it's almost like a meandering path. It's at best a two-track through a grassy area. And as you saw, the property is overlooking the Windstar property, it's overlooking the back of Lazy O, it's looking out towards the monastery. Jonathan has given you some photos in his report that I'm going to show, and you really start to see, you're looking out over big, open, undeveloped backcountry in Pitkin County. When you look at the survey, you see that Rural Mountain Way actually doesn't touch this property. So the property, let's see if I can do this upside down. The property is all this, right? That's not
On the
working.
road's way down.
I'm not right over it. So the property is that area. Rural Mountain Way is coming here, and there's an easement that came with the deed to the property. There's an easement that cuts across through here to get you onto the property. What's very interesting in relationship to the question you asked about the other properties is that it?
That's,
Yeah. So again, we're looking at Rural Mountain Way coming through here, and you see it just about appears to touch the property here, but it actually doesn't. So the top of the mesa, if you will, sort of follows the top of Rural Mountain Way, okay? And this property is actually on the back side. So it's on the side that faces towards the monastery and faces towards Lazy O and Windstar. The properties next to it, these two, sit more, and the adjacent properties sit more on the top of the mesa. So it's very hard for me to answer the question as to whether those actually are equally constrained. They sit facing the development that you see on the top of the mesa, where this property, you have to take the easement down onto the backside. So you do a cut onto the backside, and then a house would be on the hillside below, literally facing right at the Windstar open space. So this property has a different character than those other properties. The one immediately to the adjacent to this one actually has a viewing platform right about where the pen is right now. So in theory, there's a building site there. I don't know what the quarter-mile buffer will do to that building site.
So the building site won't be in the winter concentration area, but you've got a buffer from a winter concentration area by a quarter of a mile, and it may well be constrained as well.
You can see it on Jonathan's picture.
Yeah, I was going to put a couple of those pictures
On
up.
both of his.
This one probably shows the character of the area as well as any.
And it's pretty much right in the winter concentration of all of those properties.
Which way gets it? Yes. Does that do it? Yeah.
Including the property that has a house on it.
I mean, that's the kind of view that you have from up on top, looking down. You're looking out towards towards the WinStar open space, and it's really, you know, big open hillsides area with very heavily shrubbed, mature, healthy, uninterrupted shrubs. So the disturbance that would happen if there were development, we would basically be bringing an access road down through this kind of hillside here. You know, the slopes are not extreme, so we're not talking about 45% slope, but we're probably talking 15 to 30 and 30 to 45. Extensive disturbance there. When we brought Jonathan Losky in, he obviously looked at the mapping. Lance has described the findings. This isn't an elk concentration area, but I think it was more important when he went out to the site, and then we brought Taylor Elm of Colorado Parks and Wildlife to the site. And what they found on the site is this is accurately mapped as a winter concentration area. They found heavy evidence of browsing of vegetation. They found, and the pictures demonstrate this, they found the area is laced by game trails, and they found a considerable amount of animal scats. So Taylor Elm concluded this mapping is really accurate. And this is, in fact, a winter concentration area. Now, as Lance has said, the code applies a quarter-mile buffer around winter concentration areas, which encompasses this entire parcel, and that makes the parcel undevelopable. But the code really gives you two choices to make here. You can do one of two things. You can affirm the appropriateness of the buffer and make a determination that this parcel is constrained and award TDRs as compensation. Or the code in section 7-20-70F authorizes you to reduce the buffer to allow development to occur. So as Lance said, you know, we could have come in here on a taking situation and begged forgiveness and said, you know, the buffer came after the property was bought and we can't meet it, and shouldn't we be allowed to develop here? But the CPW referral really says don't do that. And I'm just going to read two sentences that Taylor Elm wrote. He said, CPW supports the transfer of development rights from this parcel to preserve important seasonal habitat and movement corridors for wildlife. Given the obvious use and undisturbed nature of this property, it does not seem appropriate to approve an exemption or reduction to the wildlife buffer and allow development to occur on this lot. We followed Jonathan's advice and we followed CPW's advice in applying for this constrained site designation, and we hope that you follow their lead and the recommendations of the planning office and make that determination. So,
Nice. Questions for Helen?
He answered my questions.
This is a public hearing. Anybody wish to make any comments on this? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Bring it back to the board.
Does the board have any further discussion, or can I make a motion?
You may make a motion, and we'll see.
I would like to make a motion to authorize one constrained TDR for the Woodward parcel as determined to be undevelopable or severely restricted.
Second.
I have a question, just tangential to this. How many other counties do you think have you worked with and know of that really look to the protection of wildlife like Pitkin County does and offer different incentives like TDRs?
you know, we're probably as aggressive as any that I know of. I did work up in Teton County, Jackson Hole, shortly after I left work here for Pitkin County, and we modeled quite a bit of their system on the efforts that we had undertaken here in Pitkin County. So To an extent, that is a grandchild or a stepchild of the Pitkin County system. Same thing in Eagle County. I help them with their work. And they've used some of the principles that we use here, not nearly as aggressively as Pitkin County. You know, I mean, we've got one of the most progressive county codes that I know of in the state. And it's a model that several other counties have used. But, you know, these kinds of buffers, while strongly recommended by Colorado Parks and Wildlife, usually are not applied because of the impact of going beyond where the habitat is and jumping property lines and encompassing large areas. So, you know, we've got very innovative principles here in terms of the state of the art of what I see in this.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, your choice of words, calling Pitkin County progressive, which I agree. A lot of developers would say it's very arduous and restrictive.
Well, it should be. That's why we all live here.
Right, but given what we're able to do with cooperating landowners as well as an incentive to protect these areas for wildlife.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm involved with another piece of property in Old Snowmass, and it also falls within a quarter of a mile of a winter concentration area. But in that case, CPW is taking a very different position. It's, no, this is a case where we can understand the need to adjust the buffer. And it doesn't, so it's not as if every time they go, well, we're going to see if we can get the county to grant TDRs. I mean, they understand that this is for the rare case where it's land that really just shouldn't be developed at all, not valley floor land.
Well, and I'll just make note that the list of TDRs, which I really appreciate, I was on the board for all of those, including the last one in 2009, so it was nice of you to wait to bring this back until I was back here, so I could make the motion.
All right, we've got a
Glad to
motion, we
help.
have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And thank you
Thanks
for
so
joining
much.
our meeting all day.
Okay, that concludes our land use public hearings. We have one land use action item, and that is a review of the American National Standards Institute for Disability Floor Area Growth Management Exemptions.
Hi.
Joanne?
We were wondering what that meant.
Well, hopefully I can answer some of your questions. So, can I start?
If you would just start by introducing yourself, please.
Sure, I'm Joanna Schaffner, zoning officer for Pitkin County. Zoning planner for Pitkin County, sorry. So it has already been 3 years, and we're back to review the ANSI code amendments that we did. ANSI stands for the American National Standard Institute. They provide a code which addresses development for disabled persons. 3 years ago, the board approved amendments to floor area, building height, and growth management exemptions to allow for modest increases to homes, increases in floor area to accommodate ANSI development. I think there's only 3 things that I'd like to add to my memo, 3 points I'd like to make. One is that at the time of adoption, some board members were very enthusiastic about the proposed amendments, and others had some reservations about there being perhaps too many growth management exemptions. And also, certain board members were concerned with abuse. If we were giving out all these additional floor area exemptions, they thought all of a sudden everybody would take advantage of this and would be getting these bigger houses. And my second point is the amendments look to increase accessibility and visitability. Those are 2 important components. One is to make the house more habitable for the occupants, and then the other chapter deals with visitability. So if you yourself are handicapped and you go and you want to visit a friend, then you can navigate that house as well. And then finally, there have been 2 houses that have taken advantage of this, of these exemptions, and they're the same 2 houses that were present at the time of adoption. One house is still under construction in Mountain Valley, and that was approved with an additional 1,500 square feet. And one house was approved in W/J, and that was approved with an additional 650 square feet. And those are the only two houses that have taken advantage of this. Both have covenants with regard to the use of the structure and how it has to maintain certain elements of what gave it the exemptions, right? So those are just the three extra points I wanted to make, and otherwise I hope to be able to answer your questions.
I have a question. I fully support this, of course, but what happens then, say the house in Mountain Valley that qualified for this exemption and they sell to somebody who wouldn't have qualified? It's already built, so it's already there, correct?
You don't have to qualify
for
the exemption. You just have to construct your house. You have to design and construct your house to be compliant with the code. You yourself do not have to be disabled.
I thought you would have to have some kind of qualification in order to get the exemption, but
Well,
I must have interpreted it wrong.
Well, one of the goals when we discussed was not only for the occupants, but for visitors. Yeah, for guests.
And you might have a dependent that was not
Right.
the applicant, but needs
Well, and you
that.
never know, yeah, okay. So I just, that's interesting, because living with somebody who's disabled, who doesn't have those issues, but could, and could have, I can truly understand.
You know, there was a lot of discussion about that because the question was, will developers start building spec houses for the disabled? And they're
They
not.
get the bigger square footage.
They are not.
Okay. All right.
Well, they should.
But they are not. They have not taken advantage of this.
Right. So that's why we brought it back. Do we need to have it brought back again in a time frame? I mean, you were on the board at the time you
Well,
adopted
that was a
it.
question we had, that was one of your questions you posed. We had a 3-year sunset and whether we need to do another sunset. I guess my thought was that at some point, if it becomes kind of crazy, we could always, the future board could always come back and revisit.
Any board can revisit any provision at any time, so it's, this just required it, and by the sunset, it will automatically expire and no longer be part of the code at the end of the 3 years.
Yeah, I'm comfortable just not having to have a sunset at this point.
I agree.
Me too. I mean, the idea of the sunset was to see if there was what was gonna happen, what would be the effect. And if 2 houses are under construction or have been built in 3 years, I can't see that that's a problem. So you're gonna bring it back to us?
Yeah, we didn't know what you would want us to do, and John just said that we actually should do it through ordinance. So we will bring an ordinance back that just removes the sunset provision.
And reinstates the provision itself. Okay.
Lance, was your compatriot Mike Kramer coming back over?
He's right there.
Hiding behind the post.
Great, perfect.
Thank you, Joanna.
Thanks, Joanne.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go on to open discussion. And we got Mike Kramer here based on a request from Michael Owsley yesterday to give us an update on procedure, how the procedure for special events and where ComDev comes into play and where the BOCC interacts.
Sure. Was it specifically the X Games you guys wanted to talk about, or was it just
Not brought up
overall?
X Games specifically, but
Okay.
it's sort of a broader question in terms of
okay,
understanding the process.
Sure.
And when are we involved and
Uh-huh.
what are the decision points?
Yep. So special events are handled by Pitkin County Community Development, and we have a joint web page with the town of Snowmass Village, the city of Aspen, and then Pitkin County, where all 3 jurisdictions have a certain web page where applicants can upload an application for a special event onto this website. And then once those are uploaded, our department then downloads them and refers them out to all the appropriate referral agencies. And commonly throughout the years, we've brought in these referral agencies to talk to the board. It's the sheriff's office, the ambulance districts, the fire districts, homeowners associations, caucuses. They're all part of our referral comments, just like a land use application is. And in review of that, we look at safety and operations of special event permits, impacts to public facilities like roads. We look at parking plans, duration of events, and things like that. And after review and comments from referral agencies, we administratively will approve or deny, or approve with conditions, a special event permit, which then Lance signs, and then we issue to the applicant, and they have a signed permit from Pitkin County. There are occasions where there are big special events that we know of, obviously X Games and Pro Cycling Challenge, where there's such community and valley-wide impact that we bring to the commissioners issues that arise. And if you remember, in September we talked about the concerts at X Games. So that was one of the things that we would bring to the commissioners. Over the years, we've done Pro Cycling Challenge with you, and in the first couple years, we actually made it a BOCC approval. As I said, typically the special events permits are administrative review, but if you remember, we have that provision in the code that says that we can kick any administrative review up to the Board of County Commissioners for review and decision. So on those big ones, we do that. So that's basically the process. And am I missing anything on it you wanted to know additionally?
Well, for one thing, in that September meeting, which seems like ages ago, we had some preferences for the concert duration, and that was actually brought to us because it was a change from the previous year, and it was a lengthening of those concerts, and we didn't agree with that. We thought, but we never heard back on whether that's incorporated or not, and we actually never heard back in terms of, we have finalized this, they have their permit in hand, and they're going forward. So that was the confusion, because has it been issued? And then there's also, seems to me, there's a separate aspect of it where you're building structures or temporary structures, and that comes under a different kind of building permit. And I don't know how they're conjoined, right? So it has to meet building codes, but it also has to be part of your special use permit. So those are some of the confusions we had. So has it been approved?
Not yet.
Not yet. But they're building.
And they do have the building permits.
Right, they do have the building permit. So that puts us, at least from my point of view, in an awkward position of sort of moving it forward, but holding back at the same time. And there's a point within that tension where we couldn't possibly hold back the permit. So it makes it difficult for us. So if it was decided in July that they had complied with the permit, there were no more questions, that makes some sense. But the permit hasn't been issued, but the structure's being, so it's in progress, so the ship is at sea. We're not going to call it back to harbor. So that was my dilemma, at least. I don't know about the other commissioners.
That tension is the same tension we feel it up there on the third floor when their permits are in for their scaffolding, and they say, we have to have the scaffolding in the ground before the ground freezes and before there's snow. And we think, but we have not approved your special event permit, though we have for 12 previous years.
But it's a perceived own risk.
And there's the chance that if something went awry, that the permit might not get approved and the scaffolding is there for no avail. But by the fact that ESPN, as much as Mike cajoles them, the fact that they have never gotten the permit in July is a problem. It would be good if it were.
Yeah, I think at the very least it should precede their construction or their staging of the event, because there's a proceed at your own risk aspect to it, but there's also how would we actually in good faith deny a permit? Because they would come forward and say, not only have we scheduled airtime around the world and we expect 3 billion Chinese to watch it, you can't possibly deny this permit. And so that's the risk for us. So I think that my feeling would be, at the very least, to have the permit in hand that allows construction going forward, not to have construction precede the issuance of the permit. I mean, I don't know how the other.
No, well, I totally understand that. I would, if there was an issue that came up that was really significant to them proceeding, and it wasn't agreed upon by staff who's been doing this, I would pull it and say, sorry, you guys knew what the risks were, you proceeded, we understand that you have a time frame. You need to get the holes in the ground before it freezes, you need to get airtime, you need to book, venues for the musicians that are coming, which are on here, which I have no idea who any of them are, but they're coming, and, that's a risk that they take, and I think we're very clear to say to them, you want to move forward, you're really moving forward, because at the end of the day, it could happen that it's a no. Because if they couldn't comply with what is needed for public safety or transportation, those would be significant, and I wouldn't let them move forward without those things in line.
But don't you think, Patty, to have a permit, a special use permit issued before
I agree with
construction
that.
wouldn't be, that's.
No, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying that if it was to happen, that it did.
That puts the leverage on our side. If we let them build, the leverage starts to go to their side. I mean, you're tough enough that you could say no, but I'm not sure that I could let 3 billion Chinese down, so.
That's because you're taller than me.
So what are the impediments to getting the permit in it? Could we tell them, listen, in future years, you're gonna have to have that special permit before we issue any construction, and that's subsequent to the special use permit?
That makes total sense, Michael, and we can certainly ask ESPN to do that. They submitted their official, Pitkin County special event permit to us, and I think it was late August, early September.
They can do it
I think it was, and then we had the work session on September 22nd, when we noticed that the concerts were, there were more and they were later, and then we had the discussion about time frames and changing the late concert, and they made those changes. The problem is that I'm not sure if ESPN is always ready to submit their application in July. And in tandem with that, their scaffolding companies and their engineers, we have trained them to submit their permits early so that we, Pitkin County staff, are not rushing out there the day the X Games are supposed to start and doing our inspections. We've actually asked them to get these things in September, or in the summer, so we can look at these and then make timely inspections of these structures. But we can certainly ask ESPN to get this thing in and get us at least a general application, and then hone in on the specifics of it later then, like this.
Do you agree with that, George?
Yeah, I'm just curious why they wouldn't, and I'm not sure why you would actually need it in July versus August or September. That should be plenty of time to, unless it's a resource issue on your
Well,
end.
to answer that, George, when we say July, then we expect it to come in August.
So you just set a firm date.
Yeah, well.
We should be saying now for next year?
Except there is no firm date. This is 3 billion Chinese. That's the problem.
Oh, they don't all watch TV.
But that is the problem.
But that is the problem.
There is no
Millions
firm
and
date,
millions
and
and
they know there's no firm date.
But actually, it doesn't have to be a firm date, but those construction permits aren't going to be issued until the special use, so that's ancillary to the main event, which is a special use permit. And that timing is up to them, as far as I'm concerned, but it has to be in that sequence.
I don't know, I just heard Mike say that we asked for those construction permits to come in for our benefit, not for theirs. So we're in this rock and a hard place of not wanting to issue it, but it's better for us if they submit it early.
It is, and I have to admit, without the benefit of having our sheriff's office here to comment on it, if it did come in June, let's just say that it did, I'm not sure if the sheriff's office would be ready to sign off on it in June either. You gotta remember, in July, we're dealing with the Pro Cycling Challenge, and that is an immense commitment by the sheriff's office and our county staff to deal with. And to also be reviewing an X Games permit would be a lot, but, you know, we could ask them that if they could try and do them.
Right, I mean, that's why I asked if if the issue was partly a resource, but I would agree with Michael that at least before any structure goes up, there's a permit in hand.
Okay.
For the event itself.
I mean, that's just, it's sort of like building a house. I'm not gonna build my house ahead of time, start my house, and then a few months later, oh, I'm applying for my permit for my house.
Or acquire your land. Because, you know, it's essentially, yeah, I'm gonna build a house, but I haven't bought the land yet. I mean, that's what the special use permit is. So, and it's up to them on how they wanna structure it. That's fine. And I think, given that we have these special events and that we've said, we've countenanced these special events, that Sheriff's Department, Community Development has to develop the capacity to handle those special events.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, X Games, unlike Pro Challenge, X Games, they have a contract, a multi-year contract with a ski company. So it's not like they have to decide, well, where are we gonna go next year, because they've got a 5-year or 10-year contract, whatever. Pro Cycle Race, it's year by year, you never know if that's going to get pulled, if they're gonna pull that off, or the route's gonna change until coming up probably pretty soon, next couple of months, you know?
And we've helped them refine their application. They know exactly what's gonna be asked of them. And where they can't push on those boundaries, they know what those boundaries are now. I don't see that that's a problem. I don't care what their lineup is. That booking can happen anytime, I don't care, but they're gonna have 5 musical events that are gonna end at 11 o'clock. Fine.
I have another question that's kind of a sidebar to this. I got a call from somebody who lives, I'm not exactly sure, West Buttermilk Road or something, who had issues with illegal parking and trespassing on their property. Should I, and they're afraid it's gonna happen, should I just let Joey, the sheriff's office, know? Okay. I got the guy's name and number and address, and so I'll just, because he saw the thing about the concert, and he was like, well, what do you, because he apparently goes to work at like 4 in the morning, and he's like, Thursday night, midnight, still music, so he'll be happy to see this is it's even earlier, 10:30 on Thursday, school night, curfew. Okay, thank you.
When was the concert times decided? Was that a while ago?
Well, they were decided, they were preliminary times that we had brought to the board to talk about.
Right.
And then if you remember, you know, we told them, well, you know, 12 o'clock is too late on Thursday, and switch the late concerts to, you know, the weekend nights. And that's what they did with this chart here. And that's
Yeah,
what
I mean, my reason for my question is because this is the first time we've actually heard back from our comments or our requests.
So you're asking whether it was in October, November, or?
Oh, they made the change, when did I get
Well,
this?
that's the first time I've heard it anyway.
Yeah. My plan, I guess, as far as process goes, as we always do with X Games, we bring it to the board for final review, and we have typically done that in early January. And my plan was just to show you this then, and this, you know, with all the comments that we heard at the work session, you know, this schedule and concert schedule was in compliance, or at least compliance, that, you know, they took into consideration your comments.
So I guess because we didn't hear any feedback or kickback, that we could assume that our request would
Move forward.
would hold.
Yeah, you could have assumed that, and I could have done a better job conveying that information earlier to you. Like I say, my plan was to do that in January. If Vanessa wouldn't have complied with your comments at that work session, we would have had her in here the next meeting to say.
Because this says as of 11/13,
All
so.
right, that's what I was curious about.
Yeah.
All right, great, thanks. Anything else for Michael?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for the work you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see, Phyllis, do you have anything for open discussion?
I do not have anything.
Board members?
No, sir.
With that, I think we may adjourn.
Would you like a motion to adjourn?
Need a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Keep my 100% record.